Chapter 268. However, Rong Rui soon stopped. Turning his head, he looked at Rong Anna and said, "Lend me your phone. You want to smash it again? Text me." Rong Anna reluctantly threw the phone to him. He quickly entered a string of numbers and wrote, "Menjing, I need to go home for a while. I will come back as soon as possible. Don't miss me, Rong Rui." After sending it, he deleted the message and returned it to Rong Anna. Then he got in the car and went back to the Rong family. Rong Anna did not have to look to know who the message was sent to. She sneered and said disdainfully, "You must have been kicked in the head by a donkey." When she got home, Nanny Rong had already left work. She entered the password and entered the door. He parked the car and followed. At the door, he hugged her. Feeling his body close to hers, she blushed and rubbed against him. "We're still at the door. Be careful." Li Xiqing held her in front of him with one hand and pushed her into the door. Closing the door behind him, he whispered in her ear, "Who dares to look?" Su Qianxi blushed even more and wanted to escape. With a scream, she was already in the air. Her body was lifted and she only felt dizzy. When she came back to herself, her back had fallen on the soft European-style leather sofa. Su Qianxi thought of the craziness yesterday and felt a little scared. She resisted and pushed him away. She tilted her head and panted, "Let's take a shower first." He couldn't help it, but she was so scared. It must be because of yesterday's intemperance that made her uncomfortable. Pulling her up, Li Xiqing held back his discomfort and zipped her up before he got up and said, "I'm going to take a shower first." Su Qianxi blushed, nodded and whispered, "Be careful of the temperature." It was already autumn and she would catch a cold if she took a cold shower. Seeing her like this, Li Xiqing wanted to press her down and ravage her. However, there was still a long way to go. If he scared her, it would be bad. Just after he went upstairs, Su Qianxi's phone rang. It was from Kingstown First Hospital. "Is this Miss Su?" "Yes. It's like this. A few days ago your friend Mr. Lu's wound hasn't healed yet, and he needs continuous anti-inflammatory injections. However, Mr. Lu disregarded the doctor's advice and insisted on leaving the hospital. I hope you can persuade him. It wouldn't be good if the wound got infected." "Louis Han was discharged by force?" "What?" "I'm not sure, but he's not in good condition right now. He had a fever when he was discharged. I hope you can bring him back or the consequences will be unimaginable." "All right, I understand. Thank you for your hard work." "Thank you." Hanging up the phone, she called Louis Han, but his phone was turned off. He was still running a fever when he was discharged. Was Louis Han a fool? Su Qianxi felt a little angry. This guy was really brainless. His phone was turned off and he was discharged early. Su Qianxi's heart was in her throat. Her first reaction was to look for him. However, Li Xiqing always had an inexplicable hostility toward Louis Han. If he knew that she went to Louis Han, would he think too much? Would he be angry? Thinking of this, Su Qianxi felt a bit annoyed. Chapter 269. When he was discharged, he still had a fever. Was Louis Han an idiot? Su Qianxi felt a bit angry. This guy really had no brains at all. His phone was turned off and he was discharged early. Su Qianxi's heart was suddenly in her throat. Her first reaction was to go to him. However, Li Xiqing always had an inexplicable hostility toward Louis Han. If he knew that she went to Louis Han, would he think too much? Would he be angry? Thinking of this, Su Qianxi felt a bit annoyed. Thinking about it, she still went upstairs. In her room, she wrote a note and put it where he could see it. "I have to go out for a while. I will come back early." Li Xiqing saw the note when he came out of the shower. Wiping his hair with a towel, he took his phone and dialed Su Qianxi's number. At this time, Su Qianxi had already gotten a taxi. When she received his call, she felt a bit guilty. "What's the hurry? It's so late." Li Xiqing sounded a bit reproachful, but there was more pity in his words. Su Qianxi felt even more guilty and said, "One of my close friends broke up in love. I am going to comfort her. After all, she is good to me. Okay. Come back early." Li Xiqing did not ask more and hung up. He casually pulled over a robe and put it on, then walked into the study. In the study, there were hundreds of urgent emails that he needed to deal with. He turned on the computer and dealt with business in an orderly manner. It was past 10 p.m. and Su Qianxi was still not back. It had been more than 2 hours since she went out. He dialed another number, but it did not go through this time. On the second call, Su Qianxi picked up the phone. She sounded a bit breathless. "Hello. Where are you? I will pick you up." It was very late. Li Xiqing got up and was going to the bedroom to find clothes to change into. Su Qianxi quickly responded, "It's okay. I will go back in a bit." "Oh, She let out a scream, sounding a bit frightened. Li Xiqing vaguely felt something was wrong and asked, "What's wrong?" "Nothing. My friend is drunk. I will go home after I take her home. Don't wait for me. You go to sleep first. I will pick you up. Give me the address." "No need, I'll be quick." "All right." Li Xiqing did not insist, but he still changed his clothes in case of an emergency. After changing, he went to the study again to deal with the unfinished work. He opened his mailbox and a new email came in at the same time. The title was eye-catching. Mrs. Li's night meeting with her boyfriend. "Mr. Li, are you cuckolded?" His face suddenly darkening, Li Xiqing clicked on it and saw a small forest at first glance. Just in front of the bushes, Su Qianxi got out of a taxi, still wearing the clothes she had worn today, carrying a small bag. In the second photo, Su Qianxi was walking into a community, and this community, it was where Louis Han lived. There was a fire in Li Xiqing's heart. He tightened his grip on the mouse, his veins bulging. Pulling it down, she climbed the stairs. Then Louis Han opened the door for her. He fell into her arms and she helped him into the house. Classmate? Has he fallen out of love? Drunk? He thought that the so-called classmate was a girl. Chapter 270. When she was on the phone, she gasped abnormally and exclaimed, when he did that to her. He suddenly became furious and waved his hand. The computer screen fell to the ground, making a crisp sound. Su Qianxi. Su Qianxi went to his house and rang the doorbell, but no one answered the door. Then she searched all the places he might have gone but did not find Louis Han. Finally, she went back to his house. After pressing the doorbell twice, the door opened. As soon as the door opened, Su Qianxi smelled a strong smell of alcohol. She did not expect that Louis Han was still drinking like crazy when he was injured like this. When Louis Han saw her, he chuckled. "Qianqian, it's actually Qianqian. Why are you here?" Louis Han hit her with a drink and Su Qianxi avoided it in disgust. However, the next second, Louis Han's body had fallen. She hurried to hold him and found that his body was shockingly hot at the moment. Su Qianxi was shocked and exclaimed, "Do you want to die? Let's go, I'll take you to the hospital." Louis Han did not give up. Leaning on her shoulder, he took a greedy breath and said drunkenly, "No, I don't want to go to the hospital. It's too depressing. I feel like I can die there." Su Qianxi did not notice his strangeness. Hearing what he said, she was a bit angry. "Do you want to die? You are already injured and have a fever. Instead of resting, you are still drinking." Su Qianxi wanted to slap him, but no matter how she dragged him, he was holding the door handle tightly and could not move. She had to help him in. Closing the door, Su Qianxi rummaged through his room but could not find any cold medicine or antipyretics. Instead, she found a bottle of alcohol. She dipped a towel in the alcohol and wiped his face. It was horribly hot. Su Qianxi was a bit panicked and picked up her phone to call an ambulance. However, when she just picked up the phone, Louis Han suddenly grabbed her hand. Su Qianxi was startled and her phone fell to the ground. "Qianqian, why didn't you wait for me?" Louis Han was very drunk. Seeing Su Qianxi in front of him, his eyes were blurry and his wounds were aching. He smiled and said, "Why didn't you wait for me? Is that man really that good? Li Xiqing, is he really that good?" Su Qianxi took his hand away. Although he was unconscious, he was very strong. Her phone rang at her feet. She glanced at it and saw the word husband flashing. She wanted to bend down to pick up the phone, but Louis Han wouldn't let go. He could only use his foot to hook the phone. When he finally hooked it, the phone had already stopped ringing. Louis Han grabbed her hand and did not let go. He was talking nonsense with his eyes closed and his whole body was red. The phone rang for the second time and she quickly answered. After dealing with Li Xiqing, she dialed 120 and gave the address. Her hand was tightly held, so she simply sat on the ground and waited for the ambulance. However, the ambulance did not arrive. Instead, an unexpected person arrived. Chapter 271. When Su Qianxi saw Li Xiqing, she was surprised, but before she could react, he pushed her away. Li Xiqing squeezed in and immediately saw Louis Han lying on the sofa, all red. The anger in his heart was burning. He strode forward, grabbed Louis Han's collar and punched him hard. Louis Han was hit so suddenly that he screamed in a daze and fell to the ground. Looking up, everything in front of him was a blur. Vaguely, he could see a black shadow walking toward him. Su Qianxi exclaimed, "What are you doing?" Louis Han was drunk and very confused. Hearing Su Qianxi's voice, he chuckled. "Qianqian." However, this intimate word quickly ignited the fury in Li Xiqing's heart. "Bastard." Li Xiqing strode forward, lifted him up again and punched him in the face. Louis Han's face quickly swelled. His teeth were almost knocked out, and blood oozed from the corner of his mouth. Louis Han fell to the ground again. His wound was torn open and bright red blood oozed out. Su Qianxi's heart almost jumped out of her chest. She hugged Li Xiqing's waist with all her strength and cried, Don't hit me." Li Xiqing clenched his fists and did not notice that the other side of Louis Han's body was bleeding. Noticing that the person behind him was actually worried about the guy in front of him, the anger in his heart burned even more irrationally. "Let go. Don't hit me, Su Qianxi sobbed and cried, "It's not what you think. I just don't want you to think too much, so let go." Li Xiqing did not want to listen to her explanation anymore. He forcibly pried her hand away and pushed her. Su Qianxi stumbled. When she came back to herself, Louis Han's scream was heard again. Li Xiqing's strength was great. As the third generation of the Red Army, his family had been very strict with him since he was a child. And now Louis Han was a seriously injured otaku. How could he be his opponent? She panicked and quickly got up. Without paying attention, she tripped over the sofa and fell to the ground. However, it was too late for her to stand up again. She crawled behind them, ignoring Li Xiqing's fists, and stood between them. In front of her, a big fist fell like a meteor. Su Qianxi had goosebumps all over her body. Looking at his fist, she did not dare to move. Li Xiqing did not expect her to suddenly come in. His fist full of explosive power stopped in the air. "Out of the way." Su Qianxi's eyes were full of tears. Looking at his obviously angry face, she shook her head and tears suddenly fell. She whispered, "You will kill him." Hearing that, Li Xiqing suddenly felt it was very funny, but his heart was cold. A bone-chilling aura emanated from him. Su Qianxi couldn't help feeling scared. Li Xiqing was so scary. Chapter 272. Su Qianxi felt that her jaw was almost broken. It hurt. However, at this moment she had completely forgotten how to react. Li Xiqing's attitude toward her was exactly the same as his attitude toward her during the period when Grandpa died in her previous lifetime. He wanted to crush and kill her with his eyes. Su Qianxi's heart trembled. Looking at his stormy eyes, she couldn't help but think of him as the Li Xiqing in her previous lifetime. So terrible, so terrible. Noticing that Su Qianxi's body was trembling, Li Xiqing's heart felt like it had been pierced by thousands of arrows, hurting hysterically. She was afraid of him. She was still afraid of him. So, she would rather lie to him in the middle of the night and run out to be with Louis Han than be with him, right? Why? Li Xiqing's voice revealed a hint of imperceptible helplessness. What's so good about him? What's so good about this guy? Hearing this, Su Qianxi did not understand what he meant. Seeing her slightly confused expression, Li Xiqing's fingers tightened. Resisting the urge to destroy them both, he gritted his teeth and said, "Come home with me." Go home and he would not pursue it. Go home and he would pretend that nothing had happened. But when Su Qianxi heard this, she subconsciously looked behind her. Louis Han was seriously injured, had a high fever, and had been drinking. Now he was beaten like this by Li Xiqing. Seeing this, Li Xiqing's heart ached to the extreme. In front of him, couldn't she pretend a little? Could it be that the love and affection she had shown him before were all fake? Or did she like both of them and want both of them? Overwhelmed by anger, Li Xiqing's rationality was gone. Reaching out, he pulled her up from the ground and growled, "Let's go." Su Qianxi exclaimed and struggled to shout, "Wait a minute, Ihan is injured and has a fever?" Li Xiqing squeezed her hand tighter. What should he do? He really wanted to strangle Louis Han so that she could completely focus on him, right? However, he could not. Louis Han deserved to die, but she would hate him. Resisting the urge to destroy him, he picked her up and walked to the door without saying a word. "Wait, Mr. Li." Su Qianxi exclaimed, subconsciously calling him by his nickname. He wanted to crush her in his arms. Walking faster, he quickly carried her downstairs. Su Qianxi panicked and was scared. She yelled, "If this goes on, he will die. In order to save me." "Shut up." He shoved her into the passenger seat, locked the door, and sat in the driver's seat. "Li Xiqing." Su Qianxi roared. "What did you call me?" Li Xiqing finally couldn't take it anymore. He suddenly approached her and pressed her shoulder hard against the back of the chair, gritting his teeth. Her name was Louis Han, and she always called him intimately, Ihan. As for him, he would always be Mr. Li, who was so unfamiliar with him that he felt cold. Such a difference, such treatment, the importance of their status was obvious. But why? He was clearly her husband. Before Su Qianxi had time to speak, she heard his gloomy words. "It seems that you have not figured out who I am to you." Chapter 273. Su Chenxi exclaimed and subconsciously covered her body. However, there was a huge gap between the strength of a man and a woman. Su Chenxi's hand was pressed down, and Li Xiqing had already pressed her firmly against the back of the chair. Hot kisses covered the sky and the earth. Li Xiqing's strength was amazing, and he was so angry that he wanted to burn her instantly. Su Chenxi panicked and subconsciously wanted to resist. However, the more she wanted to break free, the more Li Xiqing wanted to press her down. Holding her down, Li Xiqing's movements became more and more fierce, wild, and uncontrollable. The angry kiss deepened, and a faint taste of blood flowed between his teeth. She could not tell if it was hers or his. He pressed her hard as if he wanted to crush her to death and destroy her. Su Chenxi was terrified. She had never seen Li Xiqing like this. He was bad-tempered. She had seen him angry, she had seen him grieve. When he yelled at her, gave her a cold face and said mean things to her, she could run away and stay away. But why was he like this? Su Chenxi did not know what to do. Her bones were almost broken by him. It hurt a lot. But it was not even 1/10,000th of the pain in her heart. With tears running down her face, Su Chenxi's resistance became smaller and smaller, and she began to cry. Li Xiqing let go of her and sneered, "You don't want to?" His voice was filled with disdain and sarcasm. His cold tone was like a sharp blade that pierced through her. Here it comes again, the Mr. Li in her memory. Sadness quickly intertwined in her heart. Su Chenxi burst into tears. No, she did not want to see Li Xiqing like this. She did not want to see Mr. Li like this. It was too horrible. Hearing that, the coldness in Li Xiqing's eyes was comparable to the winter snow. He picked her up, pushed his thigh between her legs and forced her body up. Pinching her face with his big hand, he gritted his teeth and growled, "Don't what?" Su Chenxi stopped crying, gritting her teeth and shaking her head. "You don't want me? Am I right?" His voice was full of helplessness. "You don't want me, but you can accommodate another man?" His voice was getting lower and lower. Su Chenxi's eyes widened. Looking at him, her heart became more and more empty. His voice was very low and distant. "Don't you think it's too cruel, Su Chenxi?" The large hand didn't stop. A pair of cold, deep, and serene eyes locked onto her, like the stars in the pitch-black night sky, vast and beautiful. But it was indescribably far away. She was scared and wanted to escape, but he was faster. He pinned her down and restrained her hand. Su Chenxi looked at him, horrified. "Are you crazy? We are on the side of the road." Su Chenxi could not escape and was not prepared at all. Li Xiqing felt a little uncomfortable and lowered the chair. Seeing her painful look, he was relieved. So they didn't. However, Su Chenxi struggled even more and yelled, "No, it hurts. Get out." Realizing that nothing had happened between her and Lu Yihan, Li Xiqing was relieved and whispered, "Relax." Feeling wronged, Su Chenxi cried, "Li Xiqing, you pervert." Chapter 274. Su Chenxi shivered and hugged him tightly, whispering, "Someone is coming." He did not care. Holding her butt, he sped up. "You're crazy. Someone, The voice behind the car was getting closer and closer, and a girl's voice came. "He is also a poor guy. I heard that he was injured. The fever was because the wound was infected. It was already dangerous and he was beaten up." Beaten up? Isn't it? But he deserved it. He drank so much. Fortunately, there is a girl to take care of him. They must have had a fight. The man seemed to hate the girl and the girl stuck to him, but the clothes that the girl is wearing are so nice. They are all luxury goods. Her skin is so white and she looks so good in red. The two girls didn't notice anything strange when they passed by the black Maybach that was moving steadily. Under the narrow dark seat, Su Chenxi was obviously relieved. Lu Yihan lived in 203. Listening to the person they were talking about, it should be Lu Yihan. Thank God they finally offended him. However, the girl in red they were talking about sounded like that girl. "Did you Lily come here in the middle of the night?" Just as she was deep in thought, she felt the thing that had just weakened with great difficulty suddenly swell up again. Li Xiqing knelt on one knee, pressed her on the seat and whispered, "Su Chenxi, give me a child." It was said that once a woman had a child, she would stop being wild. But when Su Chenxi heard this, her eyes immediately widened. Before she could react, her lips were sealed again and she could not say a word. When Lu Yihan's operation was over, it was already past 2 p.m. Yu Lily saw the light in the emergency room went off and quickly rushed up, grabbing the sleeve of the doctor who had just walked out and asked, "Doctor, how is it?" The doctor took off his mask and said, "Fortunately he can be saved. But don't be so ridiculous in the future. Even a body made of iron can't stand it. Yu Lily let out a sigh of relief and quickly entered the intensive care unit that Louis Han had been transferred from. He was still unconscious, and the bruises on his face made him look particularly wretched. Yu Lily's heart ached. She reached out and gently touched his wound. Her eyes soon turned red. How could this happen? If I know who it is, I will definitely avenge you. Louis Han vaguely heard Yu Lily's voice. He frowned and opened his eyes. As expected, he saw Yu Lily at a glance. With disgust in his eyes, Louis Han turned his head and avoided her hand. His voice was a little cold. Why are you still here? Yu Lily's heart felt cold. She sneered disdainfully. Do you think I want to be here? I'm here to ask you for surgery fees and hospitalization fees. That's a total of 8,000, remember? Oh, give me your account number and I will transfer it to you. There is nothing else, you can leave now. Louis Han's voice was cold and Yu Lily's heart was even colder. However, he still had a look of disdain on his face. Who the F***ck wants to care about you? Damn it, I'm such a busybody. If I had known earlier, I would have let you die there. Then he seemed to think of something and asked, who beat you like this? It's so cruel. It's none of your business. Hey, don't be so stingy. Maybe I can avenge you. Chapter 275. Hearing this name, Yu Lily widened her eyes and looked at him incredulously. How is it possible, Li Xiqing? Su Qianxi's husband? Why did he hit you? Louis Han smiled and asked, you don't believe me? No. Yu Lily quickly waved her hand. I just feel strange. Why did he hit you? Even Louis Han himself did not know the reason, so how could he explain it to her? Louis Han's head was throbbing. His wounds were much better after treatment, and his body was not as hot as before. However, he was still very uncomfortable. Too lazy to explain, Louis Han waved his hand and said, you go back. I will transfer the surgery fee to you. It's too late and it's not convenient for a girl to stay here. It's okay. It didn't matter. But before Yu Lily finished her words, her phone rang. It was Ming. This was his fourth call that night. Pursing her lips, Yu Lily did not want to talk to him. Turning off the phone, she turned her head and found that Louis Han had closed his eyes, looking very tired. Reaching out to feel his temperature, Yu Lily's heart ached a little. She went out and asked the nurse on the night shift for alcohol and a towel to cool him down. Looking at Louis Han's face, Yu Lily's heart was indescribably empty. If she did not have a relationship with Ming for money, would she still have a chance with him? Looking down, Yu Lily regretted her decision. Now she was like a canary imprisoned by Ming, trapped in a luxurious cage. It looked good, but there was no freedom at all. How she envied Su Qianxi. Su Qianxi was simple and kind, completely different from her, a vulgar and hateful gold digger. Her life was also impeccable. What made Yu Lily even more envious was that she had Louis Han's love. Great. Staying with Louis Han all night, Yu Lily did not know when she fell asleep. When she was woken up by the nurse, it was already past 9 in the morning. Louis Han was still sleeping. Stretching, Yu Lily stood up and turned on her phone. As soon as she turned it on, the phone rang. More than 50 missed calls, more than 100 text messages. Damn, King retarded. Yu Lily was speechless. As soon as she finished cursing, she received a call from that person. Hey. Yu Lily sounded impatient. Hurry up. Ming was silent for a moment, then he sneered and said, Yu Lily, have your guts grown big? How dare you turn off your phone? What's wrong with turning off my phone? Who doesn't need to sleep? Yu Lily said matter-of-factly. Where are you going to sleep? Who are you sleeping with? Please, Mr. O, I'm not your girlfriend. Why do you care so much? If you're not my girlfriend, then whose girlfriend are you? At most, we're just a money and sex transaction. Why are you so into it? Last night, I didn't want to do business with you. Did you have to be so persistent? Ming was a little angry. Immediately, get your ass to the Shishan Villa area. I know. Damn it, you pervert. Yu Lily hung up the phone but did not leave. Instead, she checked Louis Han's temperature. After confirming that his fever was gone, she asked the nurse to take care of him and walked away. However, just after Yu Lily walked out, Louis Han had already opened his eyes and looked in the direction of her departure. He had long heard that she was a mistress of a young rich man, but he did not expect it to be true. Chapter 276. When Su Qianxi woke up, it was already the next morning, and Li Xiqing had already gotten up for work. Looking at the time, she was already late for school, so she skipped one class. Suppressing the feeling that his body was about to fall apart, he climbed up and reached out to pull a loose robe over himself. Stumbling into the bathroom, he found that his body was covered in bruises, and he looked very pathetic. "Su Chinsi, give me a baby?" Then he did not stop for the whole night. She was so tired that she fainted in the car. When she woke up in the middle of the night, she was already in her own bed, but Li Xiqing still did not stop. Her body was sore and her eyes were red and swollen. So miserable, Su Chinsi laughed at herself and prepared a hot bath for herself. Lying in the bathtub, she relaxed her body and fell asleep unconsciously. When she woke up, she was already lying in bed, clean. Li Xiqing sat neatly on the edge of the bed, with a simple table in front of him, a notebook and a pile of documents on it. Noticing that she was awake, he glanced at her and continued to work. Su Chinsi looked at him, pursed her lips and did not say a word. He thought that she had a shady relationship with Louis Han. Therefore all night long he humiliated her with Louis Han, wishing he could kill her in bed. However she did not. Clutching the quilt tightly she felt wronged. Pursing her lips, her tears were already falling. Li Xiqing heard her sobbing and his cold eyes deepened. Putting down the documents in his hand he said, "So reluctant?" Su Chinsi's heart felt like it was being squeezed by a big hand, suffocating. Shaking her head again and again she sniffed and wanted to speak, but her throat was so choked that she could not speak. Li Xiqing turned around and half bent over her. Su Chinsi was startled, holding the quilt and stepping back, her red and swollen eyes wide. He still wanted to do it? However, Li Xiqing did not move next, looking at her with his deep cold eyes and did not speak. Su Chinsi's heart was pounding. Looking at him she said first, "Louis Han and I are just friends. There is nothing between us. So don't mind it, don't be angry." Hearing that, Li Xiqing's eyes darkened and her red lips pressed into a line. After a long while she said, "I'm sorry." Su Chinsi was confused by his apology and looked at him in confusion. Li Xiqing did not explain and slowly leaned over. Seeing this, Su Chinsi stepped back in fear and almost cried. She begged, "No." Li Xiqing felt a sharp pain in his heart and stopped moving. The feeling of helplessness in his heart grew stronger and stronger. He looked at her and whispered, "Let me look at you. You are hurt." No need. Su Chinsi's tears fell. "Don't come over, don't touch me please." Last night he had completely lost his mind. Fortunately he asked Luo Zhan to trace the location of the email last night and found a private detective. Only then did he know that such a thrilling thing had happened to Su Chinsi. If it were not for Louis Han, feeling scared, Li Xiqing sent someone to take down the private detective and collected evidence of Tang Menjing's cooperation with the detective agency. However, it couldn't overshadow the fact that he had already hurt her. Chapter 277. After saying that, he really retreated and got off the bed. Seeing her obviously relieved look, Li Xiqing's heart ached even more. Guilt, self-blame and remorse flooded over him, wrapping him tightly. However, he still did not show any of it on his face. Clenching his fists, Li Xiqing tidied up and left the room. His figure disappeared, and Su Chinsi felt like she had been drained of all her energy. She collapsed on the pillow, unable to summon any strength. For the next 2 days, Su Chinsi slept in the guest bedroom. She did not go to school. After Nanny Rong reported her situation to the old house, Qin Shuhua came to visit her once. Grandpa Li called Li Xiqing and scolded him, while Li Xiqing's father silently sent a bunch of gifts to express his apology. For the next 2 days, Li Xiqing did not go home but stayed up all night at the company. Everyone in the company was forced to work overtime under the pressure of their boss. As the boss at the top of the company pyramid, his mind was busy, but his heart was nowhere to be seen. He thought that not seeing her would stop his heart from aching and feeling guilty. However, the more he could not see her, the more empty he felt. This time he was wrong. After working overtime until 9 p.m., Li Xiqing got a call from O Ming. O Ming sounded a bit depressed. "Mr. Li, come out for a drink." Okay. It was rare for Li Xiqing to agree so readily. When O Ming arrived at the destination, he was extremely surprised to see him. Holding a glass of whiskey in his hand, Li Xiqing raised an eyebrow when he saw O Ming. "You are late." Tsk. O Ming looked like he had seen a ghost. "Usually you are the one who is late. Every time I have to persuade you to come out with me. What's wrong today? Are you in a bad mood?" Li Xiqing pursed his lips and did not speak, taking a sip of the strong liquor in his hand. Seeing him like this, O Ming knew what was going on. He sighed and said, "We are all in the same boat." Taking the glass from the waiter, O Ming took a sip and sighed. What's wrong with you? Your wife won't let you sleep with her again? Li Xiqing glared at him and drank the rest of the wine. He smiled bitterly and said, I raped her. Oming spat out a mouthful of wine. His eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost. He blurted out, F***ck. Are you serious? You're committing a crime against the law. Li Xiqing did not speak and poured himself another glass. That's true, you brat. F***ck, didn't you say that you're not a vile person? Didn't you say that you don't do things that violate morals and ethics? Although she's your wife, this is too much. Oming's face was full of anger. For someone like him, he never needed to be forceful. He had plenty of ways to make women obediently stick to him. Li Xiqing pursed his lips tighter and took a big gulp of liquor. In the blink of an eye, another glass was gone, and his red lips were red. Seeing this, Oming was secretly shocked. He reached out and snatched the wine glass from his hand. He shouted, How much wine have you drunk? Stop drinking. Li Xiqing was a little tipsy. Hearing Oming's words, he was a little dazed and asked, What should I do? She is afraid of me. Nonsense. Oming wanted to give him a big eye roll. You raped her. It would be strange if she is not afraid of you. That's not the reason. She was afraid of him. She had always been afraid of him. Chapter 278. From their marriage until now, there had never been a time when he was not afraid. Was he really that scary? Li Xiqing was somewhat puzzled, reaching for the glass in Oming's hand. Unable to grab it, he simply picked up the bottle and drank it. Oming then found that the liquid in the bottle had already been reduced by more than half. Startled, she quickly grabbed the wine bottle from his hand and pressed him down on the sofa. Waiter, take the wine away. If he continued to drink like this, he would die. This guy had a stomach problem and sooner or later he would go to the hospital. Oming somewhat regretted asking him out for a drink. As a result, he did not complain about his troubles, but served such a big boss. Are you F***king sick? Is this how you drink? Li Xiqing was a bit dazed. Before Oming came, he had drunk half a bottle alone. However, his consciousness was very clear. There was no more wine, so he would not drink. Li Xiqing sat on the sofa, pushed Oming away and asked, What's wrong with you? Every time Oming called him out, there must be something. It was either a good thing or a bad thing. Hey, let me send you back. You're like this. What are you talking about? I'm not drunk. Li Xiqing looked at him seriously. Oming took a closer look, pursed his lips and said, What else can it be? That woman wants to run away again. I want to ask you, how did you coax your wife? Didn't you sign a divorce contract before? Li Xiqing's originally tipsy eyes suddenly became extremely clear. Yes, the divorce contract. He actually completely forgot about this matter. Suddenly standing up, Li Xiqing did not want to stay any longer and said, I have to go first. Let's talk about it another day. Oming was dumbfounded, staring at his back and cursed, F***ck, but soon he thought of something and chased after him. How can you drive after drinking so much? I will drive you. Su Qianxi did not dare to see Louis Han, not even daring to call him. Although she was very worried, she still did not go to see him. The things in the guest bedroom were still the things she used before. She put up the small bedside table and turned on the computer to do her homework. She hadn't been to class for the past 2 days, so her classmates had sent her homework and taken notes for her. Although he was in a bad mood, he still had to continue his studies. Otherwise, if he failed at the end of the semester, he would lose a lot of face. Halfway through her homework, she felt thirsty. Putting on her shoes, she went downstairs to the kitchen. When she picked up a glass of water, she heard someone talking. It was Oming. Behind him was a tall and straight figure. It was him. Su Qianxi looked at them with a mouthful of water in her mouth and quickly swallowed it. She drank too quickly and her throat hurt. Hello, sister-in-law, Oming greeted. Li Xiqing saw her standing at the door of the kitchen in her white pajamas. His eyes narrowed and he reached out to cover his eyes. Turning his head, he looked at her sharply. Put on your clothes. She blinked and looked down at her pajamas. It was a very conservative and normal long-sleeved nightgown. Was there a problem? Seeing her confused face, Li Xiqing's eyes darkened. Glancing at the faint bruise, he reminded her, Your neck. Su Qianxi was dazed for a moment, and then her face quickly became hot. She turned around and hopped upstairs. Oming was embarrassed. Well, I'm here. Let's go home. Then he quickly left and closed the door. Li Xiqing went upstairs and opened the door, but it was empty. His eyes darkening, he turned around and opened the door of the guest bedroom. It was locked from the inside. Chapter 279. Are you in there? Let's talk. Li Xiqing tried to sound calm, but the coldness was still there. Su Qianxi's back was against the door. Hearing the voice, she bit her lip and did not respond. Li Xiqing waited at the door and saw that Su Qianxi was not going to open the door, so he said, "Go to bed early. I will take you to class tomorrow." Sensing that he was gone, Su Qianxi let out a sigh of relief. Before she knew it, she was already in a cold sweat. After taking a shower, Su Qianxi finished the rest of her homework and turned off the light to sleep. It was late at night. The door to the second bedroom was pushed open, and a tall and handsome figure walked in. His footsteps were light and quiet. In her sleep, Su Qianxi felt a bit uncomfortable. Kicking the quilt away, she moaned, turned over, and continued to sleep. Li Xiqing's cold eyes softened. Bending down, he tucked her in and stood on the side, watching her. Su Qianxi did not know that someone was next to her and slept the whole night. The next day, after Su Qianxi washed up, she heard Nanny Rong calling, "Ma'am, breakfast." "No, I'm going to class." "No, eat a little." Nanny Rong called her. She did not know if it was intentional or not, but her voice was a bit loud. "I'm already thin and I haven't eaten well these days. If I continue like this, I will become even thinner and uglier." Su Qianxi felt it would be rude to refuse, so she took her bag downstairs and sat down for breakfast. However, after sitting down, a pair of intelligent big eyes darted around, looking inside and outside. However, she did not see what she wanted to see. Looking up, she saw Nanny Rong's teasing eyes. Inexplicably, she felt like she had been caught doing something bad. She blushed and lowered her head. Sir has gone to work. It is said that the company has a new project and needs to cooperate with a group in the United States. He is going on a business trip to Chicago in the afternoon. He is going on a business trip? Nanny Rong nodded. Seeing that Su Qianxi had drunk half of her milk, she added, "Yes, it is said that he will be gone for a few days." "How many days?" Su Qianxi could not help asking. Nanny Rong's smile became more mischievous. She asked, "You don't know? Didn't he go home last night?" Seeing her ambiguous expression, Su Qianxi felt a bit disappointed. Lowering her head, she took a bite of the sandwich in her hand. "He did not tell me. 5 days, he said in a low voice." Su Qianxi stiffened and paused. She subconsciously looked at Nanny Rong. Didn't she say he went to work? How could Nanny Rong lie to her? Seeing this, Nanny Rong turned around and looked at the sky. "Oh, I'm going to do the laundry." He walked over and stopped in front of her. Looking at his watch, he said, "It's 7:30 p.m. I'll take you to school." Su Qianxi was a little angry that Nanny Rong had lied to her, but when she met his gaze she cowered and whispered, "I can go by myself. Are you sure you can get a taxi here?" This was a villa area and very few taxis would come here. If he forced himself to wait for the bus, he would definitely be late. So, it was inevitable that she would get into his car? However, when she thought about what he had done to her in the car 2 nights ago, with tears in her eyes, she looked down and did not speak. Chapter 280. Li Xiqing was away on a business trip, and the house was empty again. Su Qianxi tossed and turned in bed, unable to fall asleep. Something was going on in her head and she did not even know what she was thinking. Suddenly, she got up and opened the bottom drawer of the nightstand. Right there was a translucent file bag with a contract lying quietly inside. What was the point of this contract now? Su Qianxi felt a bit cheap. Despite what he had done to her that day, she had never thought of divorce. Every time he thought of the word divorce, his heart ached to the extreme. She did not want to know. But, would he use this contract to bind her? Su Qianxi was not sure. Seeing his signature on the contract, she pursed her lips and put it under her pillow. There were still 5 days before he came back. At that time they would have a good talk about the divorce. 5 days passed quickly. During these 5 days, Su Qianxi went to see Louis Han twice. After apologizing to him, she did not dare to stay long and only dared to see him during the day. On Monday, classes would end late. Su Qianxi walked out of the school gate and saw Li Xiqing's black Maybach instead of Yang's car. Seeing this car, Su Qianxi paused. It was him. Seeing that she did not dare to approach him, Li Xiqing leaned back in his chair in frustration and stuffed the gift he had picked out a long time ago under the chair. "Su Qianxi, your husband is here. That car is so cool." A female classmate reminded her. Su Qianxi smiled and pretended not to see or hear anything. She walked to the side of the road with the girl and hailed a taxi. They got in the car and drove in the direction of home. Su Qianxi glanced in the rearview mirror and found that the black Maybach was long gone. Feeling a bit disappointed, she let out a sigh of relief and played with the strap of her backpack. When she got home she found that Li Xiqing was already there. The car was parked in the front yard. Standing at the door with her backpack, Su Qianxi looked at the door, not knowing if she should go in or not. Nanny Rong was putting away clothes. Seeing Su Qianxi standing there she asked, "Ma'am, what's wrong?" Su Qianxi shook her head. Seeing her confused look, Nanny Rong said in a mischievous tone, "Sir, you're back. You must have missed something, right? Go in and eat first." She didn't. Su Qianxi pouted and walked in. Li Xiqing was not in the living room. She went upstairs with her bag and found that the doors on both sides were open. Holding her things in his hand, he did not explain when he saw her. Su Qianxi was a little angry and said, "What are you doing?" "They're still arguing." Why did he want to move her things to the master bedroom? Could it be that he wanted to do something to her? This was too much. Li Xiqing glanced at her and said quietly, "Grandpa is coming to stay for a while." Therefore, he had to make room for his grandfather so that he could move in. Isn't there a guest room? There were more than a dozen empty rooms in a row and no one was staying in them. Why did they have to clean up her room? "Grandpa asked me to stay in the second bedroom. As his grandson, I can't say no." Li Xiqing looked at her and said seriously. Chapter 281. He glanced at her and said matter-of-factly, "Do you want Grandpa to know that we don't get along?" They didn't get along. They were fighting. Before she said anything, he continued, "Do you know why Grandpa came to live here?" "What?" "He wanted to eat sweets, but because of high blood pressure, my father did not allow him to eat, so he ran away from home." Su Qianxi was stunned. "Really?" "Ask Grandpa." Even if she asked Grandpa, he would not admit it. However, Grandpa was so old. Would he do such a childish thing? Would he? Su Qianxi felt a bit confused, but seeing his serious look, she knew that he would not lie to her, right? Seeing her suspicious look, he did not care and continued to move her things to his room. "Wait." Su Qianxi was a bit annoyed. "I'll move it myself. I'll sleep in the guest room next door." Li Xiqing heard that and paused. Looking at her, he said, "Why are you doing this?" "Grandpa will be sad." "Grandpa will understand." "How do you want him to understand? Do you want to tell him that we had a fight?" A young couple. Su Qianxi blushed, not knowing whether it was because of anger or shyness. Stomping her feet, she shouted, "Who are you calling a couple?" Seeing her like this, Li Xiqing curled his lips and said matter-of-factly, "If you are not a couple with me, who are you going to be a couple with? Don't forget we got married and had sex." "You." Su Qianxi was so angry that she could not say a word. Her face was as red as a cooked shrimp. Getting married was fine, but what did he mean by having sex? How could he say that so confidently? For the first time, Su Qianxi realized that Li Xiqing was so shameless. "Stop it." He reached out and pointed at her nose. "Grandpa will be here soon. We have to let him move in." Su Qianxi was so angry that she went downstairs with her bag in her arms. What? It was clearly his fault, but now it seemed as though she was the one who was being unreasonable, despicable and shameless. Su Qianxi was furious and threw her bag at the door. Old Master Li Sun picked up a heavy school bag before he even entered the house. He was in a good mood. Bending down to pick up the bag, he walked in with a smile and immediately saw Su Qianxi's angry look. "What's wrong? Why are you so angry?" Seeing Grandpa, Su Qianxi calmed down and greeted, "Grandpa." Just behind Old Master Li, a young man helped him move his luggage in. It really looked like that, but the old man seemed to be in a good mood. Su Qianxi felt strange and asked, "Grandpa, did you really run away from home?" Hearing this, Old Master Li looked confused. "Did I run away from home?" Su Qianxi blinked. When she was about to ask something, she heard the low and mellow voice behind her. Because he was pissed off by his son, he came to find comfort from his grandson. "Grandpa, this is considered running away from home." Realization dawned on Grandpa's face as he nodded. "So that's how it is." Su Qianxi was speechless. What did he mean by that? Wasn't that the case? Chapter 282. Seeing Su Qianxi's strange look, Grandpa nodded and said seriously, "That's right." Then he looked at the ceiling with a lonely expression and said, "My son is unfilial, so I have to rely on my grandson. Granddaughter-in-law, you don't mind, right?" Su Qianxi quickly waved her hand. "No, of course not. But Grandpa, don't eat candy too often. It's really bad for your health. I'm doing this for your own good." "Candy?" The fake expression on Captain Li's face cracked as he looked at Li Xiqing. Li Xiqing had already looked away and said, "Let's eat." Nanny Rong couldn't help laughing. She put food in their bowls and went upstairs to clean up the room for Captain Li. After tidying up the room inside and out, the last procedure was to change the sheets and quilts. However, when Nanny Rong picked up the pillow, she saw a translucent file under it. Divorce contract, she sighed. This was not the first time Nanny Rong had seen this. However, what were they doing with it? If Captain Li saw it, it would not be appropriate. Thinking about it, Nanny Rong put it back in the last drawer and locked it with the key. After dinner, Li Xiqing took a shower and went to work in the study, while Su Qianxi was doing her homework in the living room. Captain Li was watching a legal program in the living room. He glanced at Su Qianxi from time to time and then upstairs quietly. After finishing her homework, Su Qianxi said goodbye to Captain Li and went upstairs. Grandpa nodded with a smile. However, when she turned around and went upstairs, he immediately sent a message to his dear baby grandson. Li Xiqing glanced at his phone. About 2 minutes later, he stood up from the computer table and walked to the master bedroom. Su Qianxi stood on her tiptoes to look for her clothes. Nanny Rong liked to put her underwear on the top, saying it was away from the floor and clean. However, this was Li Xiqing's room. Why did she put it on the top? It was too hard to reach. Su Qianxi held her breath and blushed. She pushed the underwear deeper and deeper into the bed until her fingertips could not reach it. But suddenly there was a shadow behind her. She felt a warmth behind her, and a big hand grabbed a bra and handed it to her. Seeing this big hand, Su Qianxi was dazed. Then her face turned red and she snatched the underwear away. She turned around immediately, but she was caught off guard and bumped into his arms. His sturdy and broad chest exuded the aura of male hormones. Su Qianxi's heart raced. Looking up, she saw a pair of eyes as bright as the galaxy, so deep, so dark. Li Xiqing approached her and put his big hand on her waist. He whispered, "Are you still angry?" Hearing this voice, Su Qianxi felt aggrieved again. Angry. Not only was she angry that he had done that to her, but she was also angry that he had humiliated her. Why did he think that she had that kind of relationship with Louis Han? Why did he think that she did not have him in her heart? Pushing him away, she gave him an angry stare, turned around and left without a word. Her manner said it all, she was angry. Li Xiqing's eyes darkened as he pulled her over and pressed her against the wall. Su Qianxi's eyes widened. However, before she said anything, she saw someone standing in the doorway. Captain Li was afraid that they would fight, so he came in to see. However, when he came in, he saw Li Xiqing pressing Su Qianxi against the wall and she was holding underwear. Chapter 283. Old Master Li hurried out of the room and thoughtfully closed the door behind him. Su Qianxi's blush quickly spread to her neck and the tips of her ears. She was so embarrassed that she almost wanted to find a hole to hide in. Ah! Su Qianxi turned her head and covered her face. Why did Grandpa come in? So embarrassing, so embarrassing. However, Su Qianxi was so embarrassed that she wanted to die, and the man in front of her chuckled. She was ashamed and annoyed, growling, "What are you laughing at? Get out of my way." He did not let her. Pressing her against the wall with his thigh, he whispered, "Grandpa asked us to continue and listen to the elders." Then he moved closer to her. Su Qianxi's eyes widened and she subconsciously raised her hand, trying to push his face away. However, she completely forgot that she was still holding her underwear in her hand. She put her hand on his face. He looked down and then narrowed his eyes. Feeling the softness on his lips, he opened his mouth and gently bit it. His eyes were wild and dangerous. Su Qianxi felt like she was struck by lightning. Her first reaction was to think of how he bit her, and she couldn't help clamping her legs. Lecherous. Feeling that he was approaching her, Su Qianxi's head buzzed, her heart raced, and her breathing became rapid. But soon she tilted her head and pushed him away. She ran into the bathroom and slammed the door. Locking the bathroom door as fast as she could, Su Qianxi saw the little woman in the mirror blushing. Really? Rippling, what the hell, shouldn't they be in a cold war? Why did they almost kiss again? Su Qianxi was so embarrassed that she pinched herself and cursed, "You are so useless. Ah, so embarrassing." He stood there, smiling more and more. Pinching the underwear she dropped when she ran away, he looked at the pajamas she put on the bed and raised an eyebrow. It seemed that he could bring her clothes. But just as he picked it up, he heard the bathroom door open. She walked over with a blush, grabbed the clothes from his hand, and ran away as fast as she could, as if she was afraid that he would eat her up. Li Xiqing curled his lips and reminded, "Underwear." Su Qianxi was so ashamed that she almost wanted to dig into the ground. She roared, "No. It's okay if you don't wear it, I don't mind." She felt her legs were numb. Lowering her head, she decided to ignore him and went into the bathroom. Li Xiqing was in a great mood. After more than a week of depression, he finally had some relief. It seemed that letting Grandpa stay here for a while was the right decision. Next, it was time to prepare for another matter. With a sharp look in his eyes, he opened the door and entered the study. When she came out of the shower and found that he was not there, she relaxed. She put on her underwear and went to talk to her grandfather for a while before returning to her room and falling asleep comfortably. However, in the middle of the night, Su Qianxi was woken up, which was rare. She opened her eyes and found herself firmly imprisoned in his arms. She moved and found that he was breathing evenly, sleeping soundly. However, his hand was pressed on her chest, and she could clearly feel the warmth from his palm. Gritting her teeth, Su Qianxi lifted his hand, trying to move it away. But the next second, his hand fell again and rested on her butt. Su Qianxi shivered and blushed. Twisting uncomfortably, she pushed him away and whispered, "Get out of my way. Don't hug me." However, he was asleep, so how could he hear what she said? She moved away unconsciously, not knowing if it was intentional or not. Wan Lily thought, "Mr. Li, I did not expect you to be like this." Chapter 284. Su Qianxi straightened her back and involuntarily clamped her legs together. She moved forward reflexively, but accidentally bumped into a suspicious heat. Bus. Her mind went blank. Her first reaction was to push him away and roll to the side, looking at Li Xiqing in surprise. This fellow was actually not even well behaved when he was sleeping. Was he having an erotic dream? Su Qianxi looked up at him and found that he had not woken up even after she pushed him like that. She quietly let out a sigh of relief and muttered with a look of disgust, "He did not even wake up. He is sleeping too soundly." She consciously moved away from him, huddled on the edge of the king-sized bed, pulled the quilt and closed her eyes again. Soon she fell asleep again. She did not notice that the man behind her had sneaked up on her again and raised his leg to clamp her. Su Qianxi dreamed that a big tiger was chasing her, which scared her and made her run away. However, the big tiger directly threw her down, pressed a pair of paws on her chest, and licked her mouth with its tongue. She wanted to resist, but she could not get rid of it. It seemed that she could not move. Feeling that the big tiger was taking advantage of her, she could only stare. However, the movements of the big tiger became more and more unscrupulous. Its mouth moved from her mouth all the way down. Su Qianxi felt itchy on her neck. She reached out and patted a fluffy head. The big tiger seemed to be angered by the slap. It opened its mouth and bit her neck. However, it did not hurt, but a kind of itch spread all over her body, making her shiver and couldn't help whispering. Su Qianxi woke up again. She covered her neck, which was a bit wet, as if she had really been bitten by a big tiger. Looking back, Li Xiqing was still sleeping in the same position as before. There was no change at all. Damn. Su Qianxi felt that she must be too tired to have such a strange dream. She turned over and closed her eyes to continue sleeping. In the dark, Li Xiqing curled his lips and held her in his arms. They slept until the next morning. When she woke up, he was already gone. Going to the bathroom, she saw a strawberry in the mirror where she had been bitten by the tiger last night. Her eyes widened, she was dumbfounded. Did the nightmare come true? Was she really bitten by a tiger? But wasn't this a dream? Blinking, she suddenly came back to herself. Gritting her teeth, she cursed, "Asshole." He actually took advantage of her while she was asleep. She squeezed the toothpaste and brushed hard. Then she covered the mark on her neck with concealer before she changed her clothes and went downstairs. Captain Li was sitting at the table, reading the newspaper and eating breakfast. Seeing Su Qianxi coming down, he teased, "You're awake?" Su Qianxi washed her hands and sat down. She took a sip of the milk that Nanny Rong had prepared. That kid went out early in the morning. I really don't know why he earns so much money. Look at him, he looks like he didn't sleep well. How pitiful. Su Qianxi's mouth twitched. He deserved it. Instead of sleeping in the middle of the night, he did do bad things. However, he just told me to host a make-up wedding for you. Have you picked a date? Su Qianxi was a bit dazed. Make-up wedding? Yeah, that kid looks pretty happy. Why would a grown man like him want these vanity things? He used to hate this kind of extravagant occasion the most. Every time he attended, it was like asking for his life. Now, he actually has to organize it himself. Wan Lily, Captain Li, does your grandson know you're so gossipy? Chapter 285. As he spoke, he did not forget to look at Su Qianxi. Seeing her slightly shocked face, he immediately added fuel to the fire. I don't know what's wrong with me. I thought it was your idea. It turned out not to be. Su Qianxi nodded. Su Qianxi shook her head and couldn't help smiling. It turned out that he still remembered. She had thought that he just mentioned it casually and would forget about it later. Unexpectedly, he remembered it for so long. Su Qianxi smiled wider and wider. Catching a glimpse of Grandpa's teasing eyes, she blushed and lowered her head. After finishing her breakfast quickly, she left for school. After a day of classes, Su Qianxi picked up her cell phone and found 2 missed calls. It was from Papa Song. Su Qianxi called back and forth and it was soon answered. Song Yifun's voice came through. Su Qianxi, are you free tonight? Yes. Are you back in China? It was not the first time Song Yifun had called Su Qianxi, nor was it the first time he had heard Papa. However, every time he heard it he couldn't help but feel happy. With a smile, Song Yifun said, Yes, I'm back today. Your Uncle Sheng is going to have hot pot at home and he wants you to bring your husband. If you are free you can come with us. Hearing that, Su Qianxi was a bit confused and said, I'm afraid that's not possible. Grandpa has been staying with us for a while, and we have to have dinner with him. I see. What a pity. Song Yifun's voice was full of pity. Your Uncle Sheng bought a lot of ingredients, but it seems that they are going to be wasted. Then why don't you come with Uncle Sheng to our house? It's cold now and hot pot is perfect. I will ask Nanny Rong not to cook. Okay, I will call Shiming. They reached an agreement and quickly settled the matter. Captain Li had a good impression of Song Yifun and Xing Shiming. Sitting in the living room they had a good time talking. Li Xiqing had always been a man of few words. He would only say a few words at critical moments and the rest of the time he just listened quietly. Su Qianxi and Nanny Rong worked in the kitchen for more than half an hour before the ingredients were processed. The aroma of the soup spread far. It's ready? Su Qianxi shouted, drooling at the aroma. Nanny Rong prepared bowls and chopsticks for everyone and quickly asked them to sit down. Under the old man's insistence, Nanny Rong reluctantly sat down. The ingredients went down one by one. Su Qianxi picked something for herself and ate happily. When she was almost done, a big hand picked up a piece of meat, dipped it in the sauce in front of her and put it in her bowl. Su Qianxi was flattered. Looking up, she saw Li Xiqing's calm face. It was as if he wasn't the one who had just picked up the meat for her. Without any hesitation he stuffed the meat into his mouth. However, when a certain someone saw that she had finished eating, he reached out and picked up another green vegetable for her. Then he picked up meatballs, seafood, meat and all sorts of other things for her. She had tried to eat as fast as she could, but still could not keep up with his speed. Seeing that her bowl was piled high, she said with a bitter face, Don't take any more, I can't finish it. It's okay. He put down the last piece of meat calmly. I'll eat it if I can't finish it. Chapter 286. Hearing Grandpa's words, everyone couldn't help laughing. Li Xiqing also curled his lips and picked up a piece of vegetable with his chopsticks. Putting it in Grandpa's bowl, he said, Here you go. Grandpa was speechless. Su Qianxi chuckled and reached into the pot to get something for Grandpa. Grandpa snorted and tilted his head. No sincerity. Song Yifun and Xing Shiming laughed. The atmosphere was relaxed during the meal. Su Qianxi could not finish her food. Looking at the half-full bowl of food, a big hand reached over and took her bowl away. Holding the chopsticks he began to eat slowly. His movements were elegant, but Su Qianxi blushed. That was what she had eaten before. How could this guy do that in front of so many people? The elders were also very sensible. They pretended not to see it and continued to chat happily. After the meal, Nanny Rong cleared the table and asked Su Qianxi, who was going to help, to cut the fruit. Su Qianxi sat down on the coffee table with the fruit platter and gave each of them a piece of fruit. Naturally, she sat down next to Li Xiqing. Song Yifun happily took it, looked at Li Xiqing and asked, Have you decided on the venue? Ireland. Li Xiqing's eyes softened as he glanced at Su Qianxi. Ireland, a country that did not allow divorce. In this country there was a beautiful rule for marriage, which was the most beautiful vow he had ever heard. Only death could separate us. Su Qianxi heard that and was a bit surprised. She asked, Why? It's so far away. Li Xiqing's eyes darkened. With a smile, he simply said, Beautiful. Oh. Su Qianxi nodded. But I want to go to Venice. It's even more beautiful there. Ireland first, then Venice for our honeymoon. Honeymoon? Didn't we already have our honeymoon? In the Maldives? That doesn't count. Li Xiqing slowly took a sip of tea and said, Next time, the two of us will go together. Hearing that, Captain Li was not happy. He stared at Li Xiqing and said, So you think your grandpa is the third wheel? Who was the one who worked so hard to coax his wife every time? To think that he had taken such a big risk. This time it was also because of his help that they could reconcile so quickly. The old man's heart was bitter and his face was full of anger. There's no justice in this world. It's not easy to feed a grandson. If you're not careful, you'll become an ingrate. Li Xiqing smiled. Grandpa taught me well. The old man glared at him, turned his head, and decided to ignore him. This is really infuriating, Grandpa. With a smile on her lips, she was overflowing with sweetness. What should she do? She felt so happy that she was about to fly. She had a cute grandfather, a father, and him. From the corner of his eye, Li Xiqing saw her lips curl up and her aura soften. It was rare for her to be approachable. Seeing their reaction, Xing Shiming was no longer worried. Seeing Xing Shiming looking at her and Li Xiqing, Su Qianxi blushed. Forcing down the smile on her face, she picked up the fork and handed it to him. Uncle Sheng, have some fruit. Xing Shiming chuckled, took the fruit and took a bite. Me too. His voice was cold, but Su Qianxi could hear the coquettishness in his voice. Wan Lily, Mr. Li, does your family know you're so coquettish on the inside? Chapter 287. Su Qianxi pretended not to hear him, picked up the fork in front of her, and put a piece of apple in her mouth. After taking a bite, Su Qianxi felt a shadow leaning over. The fork in her hand shook, and the apple on it was bitten again. Su Qianxi blushed. Looking at Li Xiqing, who was chewing calmly, she said angrily, "Why didn't you take one for yourself?" He was trying to steal her food, biting the part she had just bitten. And this was in front of the elders. Even if he was shameless, she was. Su Qianxi saw the ambiguous looks from the elders and blushed even more. She lowered her head. Li Xiqing did not realize that at all and said matter-of-factly, "The one you took was sweeter. Hey Song, the two of us are still single. We can't take it anymore." Xing Shiming could not stand it anymore and stood up. Song Yifan was also in a good mood. Seeing Su Qianxi happy, he also felt very happy. Hearing Xing Shiming's words, he also stood up and said, "Okay. I have something to deal with anyway. Let's go." Su Qianxi gave Li Xiqing a stare, stuffed the rest of the apple in her hand into his mouth, and stood up to see them off. After seeing Song Yifan and Xing Shiming off, Captain Li said he was going for a walk. Su Qianxi hurried to follow him, and Li Xiqing did not want to be left behind. The three of them went out together. The environment around the villa was very nice. Although it was already autumn in Kingstown, it was in the south after all, and the surrounding environment had not changed much. The greenery around the villa was very good, with luxuriant branches and leaves. Captain Li sighed. "You really know how to enjoy life. I didn't even know you lived in such a nice place." Li Xiqing helped Grandpa up and said casually, "If Grandpa likes it, we have another one in the back, a little bigger than the one we live in now. Why would an old man like me live in such a big house? It's not like I have any great-grandchildren to take care of." Hearing this topic, Su Qianxi consciously did not continue the conversation. However, Li Xiqing was very happy to talk about it. He said, "I can do it any time. It depends on her." Captain Li looked at Su Qianxi and sighed. "Qianqian." Su Qianxi suddenly shivered and coughed. "Grandpa." "Sigh, Grandpa is getting old. I don't have much time left." "Nonsense," she interrupted him. "You are in good health and you will live a long life." In her previous lifetime, when she divorced Li Xiqing, Captain Li was also very healthy. If it were not for Tang Menjing, as if he hadn't heard what she said, Captain Li continued, "It would be great if I could see you give birth to a great-grandson for me. I could hug him and dote on him in my lifetime." Su Qianxi said weakly, "I'm still young. I haven't graduated from college yet." More importantly, she wasn't ready yet. Now everything she owned seemed to have been stolen by a thief. She did not feel safe at all. She was afraid that one day when she woke up, she would find that this was just a dream. After waking up from the dream without Li Xiqing, he became Mr. Li again. After waking up from her dream, she was still a murderer, facing the outcome that she was most afraid of. Holding Grandpa's arm, she slightly tightened her grip. Captain Li also realized that he was in too much of a hurry. He smiled and said, "No hurry. Let's talk about it when you are ready. Qianqian's happiness is the most important. Don't you think so, boy?" Chapter 288. Li Xiqing nodded and looked at his watch. "It's 9 o'clock. Let's go back." "Yeah, let's go back. I'm getting old and I'm tired after walking for a while." On the way back, Captain Li and Li Xiqing talked about the wedding again, from the design of the venue to the chef at the time, no matter how big or small. Su Qianxi listened to them like an outsider and was dumbfounded. There were so many things that she really did not understand. It turned out that there were so many things to pay attention to and prepare for at the wedding. However, the main character of this wedding seemed to be herself. Back home, Su Chenxi found that she was not as resistant to contact with him as she was last night. Clearly aware of her change, Su Chenxi looked up at the sky helplessly. Women, they really changed faster than the weather. After the shower, she found Li Xiqing was still working in the study. She sighed and suddenly felt sorry for him. Li Xiqing's hard work was not something she could understand. Although Li Xiqing's starting point was higher than many people because of Captain Li's name, there were very few people in Kingstown or even the whole country who could grow a company to this level in just a few years. Su Chenxi remembered that 1 year in her previous lifetime, a magazine made an inventory of the fastest growing companies in China, and Li's company ranked first. Not long after that, the list of the most valuable men in China under the age of 30 was made, and Li Xiqing ranked first. Then, it was the list of the most expensive men in China, and Li Xiqing was still first. Curling her lips, Su Chenxi felt a bit proud. Sitting on the bed with a pillow in her arms, Su Chenxi thought of what he said today about the wedding and the honeymoon. What should I do? Su Chenxi felt she was so happy that it was unreal. Lying on the bed with a pillow in her arms, she rolled over comfortably. All she could think of was how he looked when he ate her leftovers and when he snatched fruit from her. Don't think about it, don't think about it. Covering her face with a pillow, Su Chenxi kicked her legs. Too easy to satisfy. Happiness will fly away. Seeing her covering her face and talking to herself, Li Xiqing couldn't help smiling. He quietly went over, put his big hand around her waist, leaned over and whispered, "It won't." Su Chenxi's body became stiff, and then she felt embarrassed. He couldn't have heard it, right? Oh, what should I do? The cancer of embarrassment is acting up. Covering her face with the pillow, she felt hot all over. Li Xiqing took her pillow away and said in amusement, "Do you want to suffocate yourself?" Su Chenxi felt too ashamed to see anyone, covering her face and turning around. Li Xiqing couldn't help smiling and said, "I'm going to take a shower." "I'll take a bath, take a bath." Su Chenxi's heart was pounding and she hid under the blanket. Why did he have to tell her? She would think a lot. She twisted in the quilt, closed her eyes and forced herself to sleep. But why was she so excited? She was so excited that she couldn't sleep at all. Phew, I'm thirsty. She lifted the quilt, put on her shoes and went downstairs to the kitchen. Drink water, drink water. After drinking 2 glasses of water, she felt thirsty. When she was drinking the 3rd glass, the phone in the living room rang. Dragging her slippers, she walked over and saw that the number was from the old house. Chapter 289. Picking up the phone, she heard Qin Shuhua's voice. "Mom?" Su Chenxi called. Hearing it was her, Qin Shuhua asked, "Is Xiqing there?" "He is in the shower." "Oh, no wonder he did not pick up. Ask him to call me after he is done." "Yes, what's up?" "It's late." "Nothing. I'm hanging up." Qin Shuhua did not want to chat with Su Chenxi at all. The busy tone made Su Chenxi feel a bit disappointed. Walking upstairs, Su Chenxi's phone rang in the study. She walked in and saw Li Xiqing's phone screen flashing. It was Tang Menjing. Su Chenxi picked up the phone and did not say anything. Tang Menjing's sobbing voice came from the other end of the line. "Brother Xiqing, are you busy?" Then she seemed to be sobbing hard. "I'm in so much pain. The doctor said I'm having trouble with the baby. The baby is very uncomfortable. Can you come and see me?" Su Chenxi heard Tang Menjing's voice and tightened her grip on the phone. Had trouble with the baby? The baby was uncomfortable? Su Chenxi felt a bit uncomfortable, but surprisingly she did not feel as uncomfortable as before. Walking out of the study, she said, "My husband is in the shower." Hearing Su Chenxi's voice, the crying stopped. Su Chenxi continued, "It's too late. We're going to bed. Is there anything else?" There was no sound from Tang Menjing's side, so she hung up the phone. Su Chenxi pouted and opened the door. Li Xiqing had just come out of the bathroom. There was only a white bath towel on him. His short curly hair was dripping water down his tanned skin. Su Chenxi blushed and looked away, deliberately not looking at him. No matter how many times she looked at his body, she could not help blushing. When he was about to speak, he glanced at the phone in her hand. Raising an eyebrow, he walked past her, closed the door and locked it. Then he came over and hugged her from behind. Su Chenxi felt the heat on her back and blushed even more. Twisting her shoulders, she said, "Dry your hair first. It's wet." Not only did he not move away, but he also burrowed his head into her neck. Glancing at the phone in her hand, he said, "Are you checking on me?" "Not at all." Su Chenxi felt a bit uncomfortable when he crawled over, so she pushed him away and said, I just took a call. Yes, and then? She said. Before he could finish, the phone in his hand vibrated. It was a call from the old house. Mom seems to be looking for you. Taking the phone from Su Chenxi's hand, Li Xiqing turned it on speaker without hesitation. Qin Shuhua's voice immediately sounded, Hello, Xiqing? Yes. I have something to tell you. Is Chenxi here? He glanced at her. What is it that you need to tell her? It's nothing much. I'm just worried that she'll be unhappy. What is it? Tang Minjing went shopping with me today and was scared by a hooligan. Her baby is in danger. Can you come and see her? Su Chenxi panicked and looked at Li Xiqing. Li Xiqing's eyes were even colder and his voice was a bit sarcastic. What does it have to do with me? You can't say that. After all, that child was very likely to be his. Chapter 290. Mom, I thought I had made it very clear. Her child has nothing to do with me. In the living room of the old house, Qin Shuhua put the phone on speaker. Tang Minjing was leaning on the sofa, looking at Qin Shuhua with pleading eyes, her slender hand covering her slightly bulging belly. Qin Shuhua knew that Tang Minjing could not say anything at this moment, so she said, But, Li Xiqing interrupted her. Is there anything else? If not, my wife and I are going to bed. Hearing this, Tang Minjing's tears fell down and she began to sob. Li Xiqing was silent on the other side of the phone. Su Chenxi heard it and widened her eyes. Tang Minjing is there too? Isn't it bad for the baby? Shouldn't you be lying down to nurture the fetus? Qin Shuhua was a bit embarrassed. She did not expect Su Chenxi to be there and hear it so clearly. Glancing at Tang Minjing, she suddenly had an idea and said, I am visiting Minjing in the hospital. Li Xiqing glanced at the number on the screen and whispered, Mom, this is the landline at home. Qin Shuhua was speechless. Li Xiqing did not speak again and hung up. Su Chenxi couldn't help but laugh. How dare he expose her mother's lies so mercilessly, this guy was too much. However, seeing Qin Shuhua being embarrassed, Su Chenxi felt very happy. She deserved it. She was biased toward Tang Minjing. Sitting on the bed, she picked up the pillow and hugged it in her arms. Looking at the shirtless Li Xiqing, she asked, You said that Tang Minjing's child had nothing to do with you, but why did she say it was yours? Didn't you and her take any precautions? Hearing that, Li Xiqing's face suddenly darkened. Narrowing his eyes, he approached her dangerously. Seeing him like this, Su Chenxi's heart pounded. Subconsciously shrinking back, she held the pillow and said, Is it not? Why are you looking at me like this? Li Xiqing stepped forward, bent his knees and leaned against the soft mattress. Covering her with his hands, he whispered, Do you think I did it with her? Su Chenxi's heart was pounding, and she subconsciously wanted to escape. However, Li Xiqing held her down and put his arm around her waist. She exclaimed, but soon there was an itch on her waist. His fingers quickly scratched her waist, and she couldn't help laughing, twisting and struggling. No, ha ha ha, it's ticklish. Don't scratch there. However, he didn't listen to her. Instead, he put his hand under her clothes. His rough hand brushed against her skin, causing her to throb. Su Chenxi was having a hard time laughing and begged, Don't scratch me. I will die of laughter. Li Xiqing really stopped and pressed himself on top of her. She then realized how intimate their posture was. Her face turned even redder and she reached out to push him. Get up and put on some clothes. Aren't you cold? Not anymore. At this moment he only wanted to strip. He pressed her down and gazed at her with his deep eyes. His voice was low and mellow. Did you know that women are the most difficult creatures to study in the world? Su Chenxi blinked and breathed faster. Chapter 291. Su Chenxi's heart was pounding. Looking at his deep eyes above her, they seemed to be sucking her in, so dark and so thick. He looked at her and slowly pressed down. Their hot breaths intertwined and it was impossible to tell them apart. He said, So trust me. I trust you. Su Chenxi looked at him. Under her dark eyes, there was a bright light flashing and she was happy. He smiled with satisfaction and whispered, I want a reward. What reward? Kiss me. Su Chenxi blinked, raised her head and kissed him on the lips. He was a bit dissatisfied and arched an eyebrow. That's it? Su Chenxi's heart was beating faster. She looked up, put her hands around his neck and sent her lips up. Their lips were touching but they did not move for a long time. After about 10 seconds she let go of him, blushing and panting. He was still dissatisfied and sighed. The first time it was a kiss. Just now it was just a longer kiss. Do you think I am so easy to brush off? Su Qianxi felt wronged. She pouted and said, Then what do you want? Know this, know that. Isn't it the same? Of course it's not the same. He took her hand down, raised it above her head and whispered, Let me teach you what the difference is. Noticing that his eyes were unusually hot, Su Qianxi's heart was fluttering. His eyes purposely looked elsewhere, but then his lips were attacked. He planted a kiss on her lips and said, This is a kiss. Su Qianxi blushed and nodded. Li Xiqing smiled and his eyes were slightly blurred. He took her lips and tasted them carefully. From the smooth and tender lips, his hot tongue swept over her lips. Su Qianxi only felt a shiver all over her body. Without any defense, he had already attacked her. His movements became wilder and wilder. Their mouths intertwined and saliva clashed. His large hand had already let go of her hand and was holding her waist. Su Qianxi's breathing became more and more rapid, and her body shamefully reacted. Noticing this, she blushed even more, but under his skillful and hot kiss she could only surrender. His hot hands gradually moved down and under her dress. She couldn't help matching his movements. Her legs subconsciously wanted to climb on top of him, but she soon stopped. Ow, what was she doing? It was too shameful. She actually, Li Xiqing chuckled and pulled her roughly. His voice was low and presumptuous. With a deep smile and teasing tone he said, Don't be shy. There will be many more times in the future. Oh, Su Qianxi was even more shy. Many times is fine. Why did you say it out loud? Covering her face and tilting her head, she noticed that her panties were pulled down. Twisting her body she said, Turn off the light. Now I want to see you. Ah, don't look at me. Turn off the light. He finally got up to turn off the light. However, as soon as he pressed the button, he immediately pounced on her like a wolf, pulled the nuisance of the bath towel, and penetrated her when she was unprepared. Su Qianxi's hands clutched the bed sheet. The feeling of being filled made her feel ashamed and satisfied. Chapter 292. The first class of the next day was at 10 a.m., and Su Qianxi did not get up until 8:30 a.m. When she woke up, Li Xiqing was already gone. After washing up, she went downstairs and found that there were a few guests. Seeing Su Qianxi coming downstairs, Qin Shuhua was a bit displeased. Checking the time she said, Why did you sleep until now? Fortunately you are not at the old house. Otherwise the neighbors would gossip about us. People might think that we have married a noble daughter-in-law. Su Qianxi was a bit unhappy, but she still put on a smile and greeted, Mom. Qin Shuhua pouted, glanced at her and said, Xiqing went to work early in the morning. If you have nothing to do you can go to his company for an internship. You are not young anymore. You can't always be idle. Su Qianxi said, I am going to class. Oh, I almost forgot that you are still in school. You are a junior this year, right? Tang Menjing has already started to learn investment and started to help the family. Although I am not a businessman, I know that Xiqing is having a hard time. As his wife you should help him. Su Qianxi felt sour in her heart. Not again, not again. What Qin Shuhua said was exactly the same as what she had said in her previous lifetime. Her mother-in-law did not like her, and Qin Shuhua liked Tang Menjing. Feeling bad, Su Qianxi retorted, He can afford me. After graduation we will have children. Mom, you don't have to worry that I have nothing to do. When Qin Shuhua heard this, anger flashed across her face. She said angrily, I just said a few words and you're talking back. You really haven't changed at all. Su Qianxi's eyes also became cold. She said, Mom, you know very well whether I have changed or not. Now I am the daughter-in-law of the Li family. No matter how much you like Tang Menjing, Xiqing will not accept her. Of course Qin Shuhua knew that. However, when she thought that the child in Tang Menjing's belly was very likely to be Li Xiqing's, she could not help feeling warm. Hearing Su Qianxi's words, Qin Shuhua snorted and said, I think you have been spoiled by Xiqing. How dare you talk to me like this? Mom, I am just reminding you of the fact that Tang Menjing is pregnant now. She knows whether the child is Xiqing's or not. I believe in Xiqing. He will not do anything wrong to me. Qin Shuhua wanted to say something but was interrupted by a majestic voice. Shuhua, what are you doing here? Captain Li Sun walked down the stairs step by step with the help of a cane. His footsteps were not heavy but Su Qianxi, she couldn't help straightening up because of the aura of a superior. Qin Shuhua swallowed her words and said, Dad, I'm here to take you back. You are not well and Xiqing is busy with work. I'm afraid. Li Su. Li Sun had always looked down on Qin Shuhua. When she was young, this woman had been raised in a boudoir. She was inexperienced and spoiled. Although she had been married to Li Xiao for many years, her personality had not changed much. Chapter 293. Embarrassed, Qin Shuhua quickly argued, "Dad, I didn't." Captain Li ignored her and looked at Su Qianxi. His eyes had softened a lot and he said, "Why haven't you left yet? You're going to be late." Su Qianxi glanced at her phone. It was already 9 p.m. She stuck out her tongue and said, "Grandpa, I'm leaving now. Bye, Mom, Grandpa, and Nanny Rong." Nanny Rong had been standing on the side. Hearing her, she said, "Come back soon." "Got it." She quickly disappeared at the door. Leaning on his cane, Captain Li sat down on the sofa and picked up the TV remote control. He turned on the TV and began to watch it on his own. Qin Shuhua was even more embarrassed. She sat down on the sofa and called out, "Dad, Li Xiao said that if I don't invite you back today, he will blame himself." "That's none of his business. He didn't make me leave," Captain Li said without looking back. Nanny Rong heard it and felt a bit strange. Didn't she say that Li Xiao made her leave? Why not? Looking at Qin Shuhua's expression, it was very likely that she had made him leave. However, how could Qin Shuhua make Captain Li angry? It was hard to believe. Nanny Rong moved closer and pricked up her ears to listen to their conversation. Qin Shuhua looked guilty and apologetic. "Dad, I'm sorry. It's my fault." No sincerity at all. Li Sun didn't even spare her a glance. He just watched the television and laughed. Qin Shuhua's heart was pounding, but she cursed inwardly. It was all this old man's fault. She had been blamed by Li Xiao for 2 days and finally had to come to invite him back. This old man was so arrogant. However, Qin Shuhua did not dare to show the slightest difference on her face. She said, "Dad, this time I came to discuss with you. You still won't give up." Li Sun slammed the TV remote control on the coffee table and roared, "I said it's impossible. Chanshan is my granddaughter-in-law. That Tang guy thinks he can marry me just because he's pregnant? In his dreams." Hearing that, Nanny Rong immediately knew the purpose of Qin Shuhua's visit. He had asked the old man to take a personal leave to protect Tang Menjing. Nanny Rong was a little reluctant. She had been impatient with Qin Shuhua for a long time. Being yelled at by Captain Li, Qin Shuhua was a bit anxious. But she is pregnant with Xiqing's child. If word gets out, "Diske, I know better than you what kind of child I raised myself is like. I knew you wouldn't believe me. Yesterday afternoon, I took Li Zhao's hair and took it to Tang Menjing's baby for a paternity test. I got it today." Qin Shuhua took out a yellow envelope from her bag, looking aggrieved. Old Master Li was skeptical, but he took the report from Su Qingsang. Old Master Li's eyes widened when he saw the blood relationship. He thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. He blinked, and when he looked again, it was really the same number. The name of the appraiser was Li Xiao, and the appraisal institution was the Kingstown First Military Hospital. "I know my own son. He likes Su Qianxi, so he wants to keep her. Poor Menjing." Chapter 294. Startled, Nanny Rong hurried over and yelled, "Grandpa!" Qin Shuhua was scared. Pushed away by Nanny Rong's hand, she stepped back. The look on Nanny Rong's face changed, but her movements were smooth and calm. She laid the old man down and saw Qin Shuhua's frightened face. She yelled, "What are you waiting for? Call an ambulance." "Okay." Qin Shuhua quickly got up and picked up her phone to make the call. Anxious, Nanny Rong yelled in a choked voice, "There's medicine upstairs. Go get it." Qin Shuhua was on the phone when she heard Nanny Rong's yell. Without thinking, she stumbled up the stairs and asked, "Which room?" "The first room on the left." Hearing Nanny Rong's yell, Qin Shuhua opened the door of the second bedroom and walked in. However, after rummaging through the room, she still could not find it. "Did you find it?" "It's in the drawer." Nanny Rong yelled as she gave Captain Li first aid. The call was finally connected. Qin Shuhua said the address while rummaging through the drawer. However, after rummaging through the first drawer, she still could not find the medicine Nanny Rong mentioned. However, the second drawer could not be opened. In for a penny, in for a pound, Qin Shuhua picked up the huge glass ornament on the bedside table and smashed it into the second drawer. The glass ornament was broken, and the drawer made a muffled sound. The lock was broken. Qin Shuhua opened the drawer and did not see any medicine. Instead, she saw a translucent file bag with 2 eye-catching words on it, "Divorce Contract." Halfway through the class, Su Qianxi heard that Grandpa was in the hospital. Under the gaze of all the students, Su Qianxi left halfway and hurried to the hospital. Captain Li was still asleep, and Qin Shuhua was crying in fear. Seeing her, Li Xiqing immediately went to her. Su Qianxi was out of breath. She grabbed his sleeve and asked, "What's wrong? How is Grandpa?" Sudden myocardial infarction. Hearing that, Su Qianxi almost cried. With her eyes red, she yelled, "How could it be? Grandpa is so healthy. How could he suddenly have a myocardial infarction?" Li Xiqing grabbed her and stared at her, saying, "Calm down. Grandpa will be fine. Don't think too much." She burst into tears. "It's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. He would be fine. His grandfather had lived for a very long time in his previous life. He would definitely be fine." However, although she comforted herself like this, she still couldn't hold back her tears. She couldn't stop the fear in her heart. What should she do? She was scared. There were too many variables in this life. In her previous lifetime, she had been protected by her grandfather, and Li Xiqing hated her very much. Was God going to take Grandpa away from her because Li Xiqing liked her? No, what to do, what to do? Su Qianxi still could not help crying. Li Xiqing held her in his arms and suppressed his fear. He whispered, "Don't be afraid. I'm here. Grandpa will be fine. He will live a long life. Don't scare yourself." Qin Shuhua was still holding the folder that she had just taken out of the drawer. Seeing the scene of husband and wife embracing each other, he suddenly felt that it was very ironic. Chapter 295. Sir. Nanny Rong came in from outside looking hesitant. Eventually she took out the thing in her hand and said, "Master is like this because he saw this. Take a look." Seeing Nanny Rong's expression, Li Xiqing knew it was not something good. However, when he saw the words on it, he still looked gloomy. Su Qianxi looked over and immediately saw Li Zhao's name. Grandfather-grandchild identification. Su Qianxi took a closer look and read each line carefully. Her heart sank. Pinching her arms, she looked up at Li Xiqing. Su Qianxi looked at him incredulously. Taking a step back, she looked at the report and felt her heart wrenching. Li Xiqing's face was still gloomy. Seeing Su Qianxi's expression change, his jaw tightened. Turning his head, he stared at Qin Shuhua. "Did you bring this?" Qin Shuhua was shocked by her son's stare, but she quickly reacted and said angrily, "What kind of attitude is that? Is this how you talk to your mother?" "Am I?" Li Xiqing stared at her and tightened his grip on the report. His fingers were itching to tear the pieces of paper to shreds and stuff them into Qin Shuhua's mouth. Qin Shuhua was a bit scared and said, "I took your father's hair to Tang Menjing for the identification yesterday. She gave it to me early this morning. It clearly says that the baby in Tang Menjing's belly is your father's grandson." Su Qianxi looked at Li Xiqing and Qin Shuhua and suddenly felt weak in the knees. Grandpa was still in the emergency room, and the relationship between Tang Menjing and Li Xiqing was undeniable. One after another, large rocks came crashing down on her as if they were going to take her life. So hard and so heavy. Squatting down, Su Qianxi's body was shaking. Seeing that Su Qianxi was not right, Nanny Rong immediately went over and helped her up. "Ma'am?" Li Xiqing was shocked and quickly came over. However, before he touched Su Qianxi, she dodged. "Don't touch me." Su Qianxi yelled hysterically. Her eyes were red and tears were streaming down her cheeks. He still wanted to move forward, but she felt disgusted. Kicking him in the chest, she struggled and screamed, "Don't touch me, don't touch me, don't touch me. Don't touch me, don't touch me. So dirty, so dirty." Su Qianxi's voice became more and more choked, and she burst into tears in Nanny Rong's arms. Seeing her like this, Nanny Rong also felt bad. Her eyes turned red and tears fell. She glared at Li Xiqing and scolded, "You did this." Li Xiqing pursed his lips and said, "Trust me." How could he believe it? How could he? The evidence was irrefutable and it was right in front of them. How could they believe it? Even though Nanny Rong had raised him, she did not believe it. "It's not me." Holding the report, Li Xiqing squatted down. "It's not me." Holding Nanny Rong, Su Qianxi sobbed and did not want to look back at him. The door of the emergency room was finally opened. Su Qianxi immediately got up and ran to the doctor. "How is it?" The doctor dodged and said, "Fortunately, the first aid was done in time. The critical period is over. You have to be careful. The patient cannot be agitated again. You have to stabilize her emotions." Chapter 296. Nanny Rong exclaimed and Qin Shuhua was startled as well. Li Xiqing reacted the fastest. He rushed up and bent over to catch her. The sound of his knee hitting the ground was shocking. However, he did not seem to notice the pain in his knee at all. At the same time, he found that she was covered in cold sweat. His heart ached terribly and he could not help panicking, shouting, "Doctor, doctor." The fetus was actually less than 4 months old. Seeing the baby grow up day by day, Tang Minjing's heart became more and more unsettled. "Do you really think it's Li Xiqing's child?" Rong Rui's voice was like a nightmare, haunting her day and night. At the beginning she was calm, but now she was awakened by nightmares every night. In front of her, she had written half of her mother's diary. Every day she would write down her feelings in it. However, if it was not Li Xiqing's child, what was the point of writing it down? After thinking about it, Tang Minjing decided to go to Qin Shuhua. No matter how difficult the old man was, she would not abandon her. After all, she owed her. When she found Qin Shuhua, Li Xiao was not at home. Qin Shuhua and Lu Sa were arranging flowers. After sending Lu Sa away, Tang Minjing went straight to the point. "Auntie, is it still not done?" The smile on Qin Shuhua's face froze. "Minjing, you know that Captain Li loves Su Qianxi. You were in so much trouble at the party. It's not that I don't want to help you, but Captain Li and Xiqing's father both scolded me. Now Captain Li is so angry that he went to live with Xiqing. If something happens at this time, how can I live in this house?" Qin Shuhua's smile froze. Tang Minjing was reluctant. "But I'm pregnant with your grandson." "Hey Minjing, listen to me. You'd better not have this child. Once it's born, it's destined to have no father. You know how stubborn Xiqing is. Once he sets his mind on something, no one can touch it." "No way." Tang Minjing gritted her teeth. "Auntie, are you against me now? You know how I treat you. What happened to my brother?" Before she could finish speaking, Qin Shuhua's hand, which was in the middle of cutting flowers, trembled. Her face had already turned white. She roared, "Enough." Tang Minjing knew that she had hit Qin Shuhua's soft spot. Gritting her teeth, she continued, "Auntie, I saw it clearly." "Enough." Qin Shuhua's face had turned green. "You're threatening me?" "No, I'm just reminding you, Auntie. After all, I'm really carrying Brother Xiqing's child. You just want the child of the Li family to return to the family. You're doing a good deed, aren't you?" Li Xiqing said. Qin Shuhua wavered. Tang Minjing was pleased and continued, "Su Qianxi's mother must have done something to Captain Li. Otherwise, how could she have married Brother Xiqing?" Qin Shuhua did not like Su Qianxi as a daughter-in-law. Glancing at Tang Minjing, she asked, "Is it really Xiqing's child?" "A lie detector, Auntie. That's a military thing. How could it be wrong?" However, when Tang Minjing said this, her heart was also pounding. Chapter 297. The more she thought about it, the more guilty she felt. That night, she had assumed that the man was Li Xiqing. But in fact, she did not even see his face clearly before she was pushed onto the bed. Was it really not Li Xiqing? He said that he had deleted the video, which proved that he had seen it. So what was the truth? Tang Minjing was a bit uncertain. Looking at Qin Shuhua, she gritted her teeth and said, "If you really doubt it, then let's do the test." "Sure, I will ask Xiqing too." "No, don't let Brother Xiqing know. Li Xiqing was so smart that he would definitely ruin her plan. We will do the test ourselves." The fetus was only 11 weeks old, and the doctor did not recommend amniocentesis. After warning Tang Minjing about the danger, she still insisted. She could not wait. If it was, she would be more careful in the future. But if it was not, Tang Minjing did not dare to think about it and insisted on lying on the bed. When the needle pierced her belly, the only thought in her mind was, "Baby, you must do well." Qin Shuhua rushed the test result, and after she left, Tang Minjing came back again and rushed it to 6 hours. 6 hours later, Tang Minjing came as scheduled, and Mrs. Tang came at the same time. Holding Mrs. Tang's hand, Tang Minjing's stomach was a bit uncomfortable. She was nervous and looking forward to the result. However, when Mrs. Tang got the result, she was completely stunned. Seeing her reaction, Tang Minjing's heart was pounding and she was very nervous. Taking the result with trembling hands, she was dumbfounded by the series of zeros on it. The expression on Mrs. Tang's face changed from the original expectation to painful disappointment. She turned around and slapped Tang Minjing hard. "Didn't you say the baby was Li Xiqing's? How could this happen?" Tang Minjing's face was soon swollen. She stared at the result in her hand and murmured, "How is it possible? How is it possible? If it was not Li Xiqing that night, then who could it be? Who could it be?" Recently, Li Xiqing often worked overtime in the company, so Qing Yu's work was much easier. In the 3 years that she had worked for Li Xiqing, She had only left the morning shift a few times. Just when he thought he could relax a little more today, he received a call from the big boss. She complained in her heart but soon picked up the phone. "Boss, go to Star City and find 20 bodyguards and 20 nannies tomorrow." She was startled. Hearing his dangerous and cold tone, she became more nervous. "What's wrong?" Big Boss never liked to order servants and bodyguards around, and Star City, on the surface, it looked like a glamorous and lively casino. In fact, it was recognized as the largest and most mysterious trading place in Connecticut. The bodyguards and nannies there were all mute, but they were extremely expensive. Just one of them would cost millions. Many noble families liked to use such people, but what did Li Xiqing need them for? Obviously, Li Xiqing would not answer her. He continued, "Contact Luo Zhan and ask him to check the DNA registration system of the Kingstown First Military Hospital." "Yes." Hearing Qing Yu's response, Li Xiqing hung up and called Li Beixing. The call was quickly connected and he said, "Brother, do me a favor." It was a rare call from Li Xiqing. Li Beixing was very surprised and sighed, "Is there something that you can't handle?" Chapter 298. Rong Haiyue. Li Beixing repeated the name and said in an intriguing tone, "He is at the same level as Dad. Are you sure you want to investigate him?" Rong Haiyue's rank was the same as Li Zhao's. The two had always been friendly on the surface, but secretly they were fighting. If Li Beixing rashly investigated Rong Rue and was found out by Rong Haiyue, it would be a lot of trouble. Li Xiqing knew this, so after finding out Rong Rue's identity, he did not go further, fearing that it would bring trouble to the Li family. But now, Li Xiqing sneered, and the coldness almost froze Li Beixing through the phone. "I want him to know that I am investigating him. Rong Rue must have played a part in this. If it were not for Rong Rue, the truth would have been revealed in the study last time." Tang Minjing and Rong Rue had a very close relationship. Now, Li Xiqing did not even know where Rong Rue was hiding and what identity he was using to help Tang Minjing do these heartless things. However, alerting the enemy was the best way to find him and get back at him. Although Rong Haiyue was Li Zhao's opponent, he was a decent and reasonable man. If he noticed that Li Beixing was investigating Rong Rue, he would certainly investigate the reason. At that time he would naturally be able to find this guy. Li Beixing could hear Li Xiqing's ruthlessness through the phone and sighed. "It's a pity that you are not a soldier. Brave, smart and ruthless. If Li Xiqing was a soldier he would definitely not be inferior to Li Beixing. Unfortunately he was a businessman." "Okay, since you said so, I will help you. Wait for my good news. Brother, Grandpa is in the hospital. Do you know that?" Li Beixing's voice suddenly became serious. "When did this happen?" Li Xiqing briefly told him what had happened. Li Beixing was furious. "Is Mom stupid? This kind of thing. Forget it. Wait for me. I'll go home right away." Li Xiao and Li Beixing arrived at the hospital at the same time. When they met they did not look very good. Qin Shuhua and Nanny Rong were looking after Captain Li, but Li Xiqing was nowhere to be seen. When Li Xiao saw this he was enraged. He lowered his voice and roared, "That brat, get him out here." Nanny Rong hurried to explain, "She just fainted and Mr. Jiang is looking after her in the next room." Fainted? Li Zhao's anger subsided a little. "What happened?" Nanny Rong told her what had happened. As she spoke, her voice became more and more choked up. In the end she cried for Su Qianxi. "I did not expect the second young master to be such a person. It is such a pity that the second young mistress is such a good girl. She is such a jerk." However, when he was about to speak, he was shocked to find that all the people around him were from the Li family and were on Li Xiqing's side. Immediately, Nanny Rong wiped her tears and said, "I'm going to see Madame Li." Li Xiao took a deep breath and looked at the old man on the sickbed without hiding anything. Captain Li's eyelids seemed to move. Qin Shuhua walked up to him in surprise and shouted, "Dad, you're awake?" Captain Li had no strength to open his eyes. Seeing Qin Shuhua, he raised his hand and pushed her. He did not have much strength, but his resistance was obvious. Qin Shuhua's face changed, looking embarrassed. Chapter 299. Grandpa. Li Beixing called. Captain Li glanced at Li Beixing and said in a weak voice, "Beixing, call your brother. Get your brother here." Li Beixing nodded and went out of the door. He looked around and finally found Li Xiqing in the left ward. Li Xiqing was sitting by Su Qianxi's bed, holding her hand that was not on the drip. Noticing Li Beixing coming in, he only glanced at him. Nanny Rong was wiping her tears, looking at Li Xiqing with blame. Li Beixing felt that the world was about to change. He walked over and said, Grandpa is calling you over. He looks a bit angry. Li Xiqing had already expected this. He put down Su Qianxi's hand and stood up. At the moment when he passed by Li Beixing said, Li Xiqing, are you really with Tang Menjing? Li Xiqing stopped, clenched his fists, and suddenly felt a strong sense of powerlessness. No one believed him. No one believed him. Squinting, Li Xiqing only said, she doesn't deserve it. So what's with the DNA test? Dad's name is written on it, and the match is more than 70%. This can't be a coincidence. There's also the seal of the leading military hospital. Before Li Beixing finished, Li Xiqing's phone rang in his pocket. It was Luo Zhan. Picking up the phone, Luo Zhan's voice came through. Hello, Li Xiqing? Yes, how is it? I found it. There are 2 results in the system. Both have your father's name on them, but one is 0%, and the other is one after the other, but, say it. But I just checked the surveillance and found that 2 of the surveillance videos were cut. I can't see when they did the test and I don't know who Tang Menjing did it with. It's a bit tricky. Rong Rui again? It's most likely him. He's getting more and more skilled. Now even I can't find him and I don't know who he is. It's so scary. It's like he disappeared from the world. I know who he is. You don't have to worry about this for now. Do me another favor. What? In Jiangzhou I have a villa? As he spoke he paused. Li Beixing clearly sensed the sharp light that flashed in the depths of his eyes. The faint scheming glint in his eyes was clear. Li Beixing was shocked, finding it more and more difficult to understand his brother. What was he trying to do at this critical juncture? Li Xiqing suddenly changed the subject and said, I'll tell you later. Hearing them walking away, Li Xiqing, Li Xiqing, Li Xiqing, and Li and Xiqing. Su Rong Xiqing, Li Xiqing and said, sick, sick, Xiqing said. Sick said Su. Rong Su Xiqing Nanny Rong felt sad. She had seen with her own eyes how estranged Li Xiqing and his wife were from the beginning, and their relationship had finally improved. However, such a thing happened. Even she could not believe that Li Xiqing would do such a thing. She did not know how to comfort Su Qianxi. Suddenly, Su Qianxi frowned and looked at the door of the ward. A tall figure stood at the door. His belly was slightly bulging, looking at Su Qianxi with a smile. Chapter 300. Tang Menjing was carrying a bag and a bag of fruit. When she walked in, Nanny Rong looked very strange. What are you doing here? Nanny Rong had never been nice to Tang Menjing, not only because of this. Before this she did not like Tang Menjing at all. Tang Menjing did not seem to notice Nanny Rong's unfriendliness. She walked in, looked at Su Qianxi and said, Su Qianxi, I heard that you are not well, so I came to see you. Su Qianxi curled her lips and said coldly, Oh, since you have seen me you can go now. How could Tang Menjing leave? That was not her only purpose. However, seeing Su Qianxi's pale face in bed, Su Qianxi still felt very happy. Taking out a notebook from her bag, Tang Menjing pretended to be guilty and said, Su Qianxi, I know I am sorry but I am really with Brother Xiqing. He said he would give our child the best name. Every day, I can feel the baby waiting for its father in my belly. I believe Andy has already shown you the test results. I hope you can. Hope me for what? Su Qianxi looked at her coldly and curled her lips. However, her expression was very stiff. Abdicate? Let you and Li Xiqing be together? Tang Menjing did not say anything, but her expression said it all. Su Qianxi suddenly felt ridiculous. Tang Menjing was the mistress, but why was Su Qianxi forcing her, the queen, to leave? I want to see Grandpa. Su Qianxi looked up at Tang Menjing. Can you help me there? Tang Menjing did not expect Su Qianxi to make such a request and felt a bit excited. It happened that she did not want to keep the bastard in her belly. If Su Qianxi could help her, then she would be screwed. Tang Menjing smiled and was about to speak when Su Qianxi continued, By the way, tell Grandpa and Dad about this. Looking at her belly, Su Qianxi said, After all, your child is his. He will take good care of you. Hearing that, Tang Menjing was a bit tempted. Yes, now everyone thought that the child in her belly was Li Xiqing's. Although Brother Xiqing did not admit it, since even Su Qianxi thought so, why didn't she use it to get married and then find a way to get rid of him? Tang Menjing's heart warmed up. She nodded and helped Su Qianxi down. Nanny Rong was shocked and said, Madam, let me do it. It's okay. Tang Menjing is my good friend. She won't hurt me. Then she smiled at Tang Menjing. Right, Tang Menjing? Tang Menjing felt even weirder, but seeing her innocent smile, she felt relieved and nodded. We should help each other. Let's go. Tang Minjing helped Su Qianxi out of the door. People were coming and going in the corridor. There were many patients and nurses. Just at the door, Su Qianxi let go of her hand and called, Tang Minjing. Tang Minjing was in a good mood. She looked up and said, yes? However, just as he finished speaking, a hand grabbed his hair and slapped him hard on the face. Slap. The crisp sound echoed in the corridor, attracting everyone's attention. Chapter 301. Tang Minjing subconsciously wanted to dodge, but her long hair was in Su Qianxi's grasp. Seeing Su Qianxi's hand coming down, Tang Minjing wanted to resist. However, before she raised her hand, she was hit by Su Qianxi. Then, the second, the third, the fourth, Su Qianxi hit Tang Minjing's face from both sides like crazy, which attracted the attention of the people around. Shameless, shameless, shameless. Su Qianxi yelled as she hit Su Qianxi. Nanny Rong was shocked but did not try to stop her. Well done. That's how it should be. Nanny Rong wiped her tears and looked at Su Qianxi coldly. Li Xiqing was talking to Grandpa and the door was open. When he heard Su Qianxi's voice, he panicked and rushed out of the room. At a glance, he saw Su Qianxi drawing her bow at a figure. Shameless, shameless. Su Qianxi's voice was sobbing. Li Xiqing's heart skipped a beat and pulled her down. Su Qianxi's hands were red. Feeling someone was pulling her, she struggled like crazy. However, realizing it was Li Xiqing, she stopped struggling. All the strength in her body seemed to be drained. Collapsing in his arms, she burst into tears. Li Xiqing held her tightly in his arms and whispered, It's okay. It's okay. Tang Minjing's face was already red and swollen. Su Qianxi was caught off guard and lost the chance to fight back. A kind-hearted person came up to see Tang Minjing and exclaimed, Oh my God, look at her. Go and see. It's terrible. I'll take you. However, Tang Minjing did not appreciate it. She pushed the kind-hearted person away and stared at Su Qianxi and Li Xiqing coldly. Su Qianxi was held in Li Xiqing's arms, crying like a child as if it was her who had just been hit. Don't cry, don't cry. Grandpa will be sad. Li Xiqing hugged her as if he was comforting a child, caring for her and whispering gently. Tang Minjing's heart ached, even more than her face. It turned out that Li Xiqing could be like this. Sobbing, Su Qianxi said, I want to go home, honey, I want to go home. Okay, let's go home. I'll take you home. Hubby, you love me, right? Yes, I love you, only you. Hubby, you won't accept that woman, right? No, I only want you. Every word was like a death sentence for Tang Minjing. Su Qianxi looked satisfied in his arms. Burying her head in his arms, she said, I want to go home. Honey, take me home. Okay, I'll take you home. Li Xiqing felt his heart was about to be torn apart. He glanced at Tang Minjing coldly and said to Nanny Rong, Take Miss Tang to the doctor. The medical fees are under my name. Be careful. Didn't she say that the child in her stomach was his? Then let's do another DNA test. I'll watch with my own eyes. However, in Su Qianxi's ears the meaning was completely different. She loosened her grip on his sleeve and lay motionless. Li Xiqing carried her in his arms and quickly left the hospital. Putting her on the passenger seat, Li Xiqing carefully fastened the seat belt for her. However, he was caught off guard and was slapped hard in the face. Chapter 302. Li Xiqing's heart felt like it had been cut into pieces at this moment, bloody and unscathed. Gazing at her deeply, he fastened his seat belt, closed the door and sat in the driver's seat. Turning the steering wheel, he pursed his lips and did not say a word. Through the rearview mirror he could clearly see the red handprint on his face, which was a bit dazzling. She leaned against the back of the seat with her eyes closed. Tears flowed down her face, and her hands hung limply on her lap. Silence. In the car, there was only the sound of each other's breathing. When they got home, he carried her all the way upstairs and put her on the bed. They did not say a word. Lying in bed, she opened her eyes and looked at him. At the same time, he looked at her as well. Their eyes met, and there were different emotions in each other's eyes. The two of them spoke at the same time but soon shut up at the same time. Li Xiqing did not speak, looking at her with his cold and deep eyes. Su Qianxi's eyes were dry. Looking at him, her eyes were a bit empty. She opened her mouth and said, Let's get a divorce. His eyes suddenly narrowed, he clenched his fists and blurted out, No way. Let's get a divorce. With just 3 words, Li Xiqing had completely destroyed the calmness he had been maintaining. Propping his hands on the edge of the bed, he looked down at her and said firmly, That is not my child. That woman must have done something to it. Tomorrow I will go to her for a paternity test. Su Qianxi chuckled and pushed him. Stop joking. She can do something, can't you? Mr. Li, are you kidding me? Li Xiqing felt like thousands of arrows were piercing his heart. He growled, Su Qianxi. Yeah, I'm listening. Su Qianxi moved on the bed and found herself a comfortable position. Although her eyes were red and swollen, the sarcastic smile on her face was clear. Su Qianxi's attitude hurt Li Xiqing even more. She did not believe him. Tang Minjing loves you wholeheartedly. She has you in her heart. You know that, don't you? She would remember what they said in the car for the rest of her life. Li Xiqing did not expect that she would use his words against him. He retorted, I just said it out of anger. But I'm very serious. She looked at him, her eyes full of sadness. It's too tiring. Being with you, it's really, so tiring. She should not have expected that. A man like Li Xiqing should not belong to her. He and Tang Minjing were a match made in heaven. It was because of her that Tang Minjing could only be a mistress, pregnant with his illegitimate child. However, how could Li Xiqing's child be a bastard? Even if Tang Minjing was willing, Qin Shuhua would not agree. Rather than being defeated like a loser, it was better to strike first and gain the upper hand. At the very least, she could preserve the last shred of dignity that she had in her previous life in this life, right? However, Li Xiqing clenched his fists tighter and hit the edge of the bed. Impossible. You can forget about it. I will prove to you that I have never done anything wrong to you. I have never touched her. That child has nothing to do with me. Chapter 303. With a loud bang, Su Qianxi's heart skipped a beat. Looking in the direction of his departure, she was in a daze. After a while, she took out her cell phone and dialed a number. Song Yifan had just boarded the plane. Before he could sit down, he received a call from Su Qianxi. This was the first time that Su Qianxi had called him, and Song Yifan was pleasantly surprised. He immediately answered the call and called, Su Qianxi. Hearing Song Yifan's voice, Su Qianxi's helpless heart suddenly seemed to have found support. She burst into tears and said, Dad? Her voice was choked with sobs, which shocked Song Yifan. He quickly asked, What's wrong? What happened? Su Qianxi could not say a word and began to cry. Song Yifan panicked and asked, What's wrong? Tell me slowly. Su Qianxi calmed herself down and said, Can I stay at your place for a few days? Okay. Where are you? Dad will pick you up. Don't cry and don't run around. Song Yifan took down the small luggage that he had just put on the plane. Facing the confused look and shouts of the stewardess, he got off the plane and hurried out. Su Qianxi did not wait for Song Yifan in the house. Instead, she stood at the intersection where Li Xiqing would not run into her. There were only a few pieces of clothes in her suitcase. Song Yifan took a taxi and saw Su Qianxi. He immediately asked the driver to stop. Seeing Su Qianxi's red and swollen eyes, he did not dare to ask more. He put her luggage in the car and took it to his own place. When she received Li Xiqing's call, Tang Minjing was applying medicine in the hospital. Tang Minjing had never dreamed that he would ask for her by name. This was the first time since she graduated from college. Although Su Qianxi's face was swollen, Tang Minjing still squeezed out a smile to welcome this unexpected surprise. Li Xiao and Li Beixing followed Li Xiqing. When Tang Minjing saw them, she immediately could not keep her smile. She forced a smile and asked, Brother Xiqing, what can I do for you? Li Xiqing looked at Tang Minjing. Li Xiqing looked at her coldly and said, Come with me. Feeling something was wrong, Tang Minjing asked uneasily, What's wrong? Can't you just say it here? Don't make me repeat myself. Tang Minjing's eyelids twitched and she stood up immediately. Li Xiqing's attitude toward her had not changed at all. It had been more than 3 months since she had been so close to him. She felt indescribably close to him. Following Li Xiqing, the more she walked, the more familiar the surroundings seemed to her. This place. She had been here yesterday and the day before. This was the genetics department. Pausing, Tang Minjing had a bad feeling and asked, Brother Xiqing, why did you bring me here? Blood test. At the same time, Qing Yu had taken out a document and said, Boss, I got it. Yesterday's results. Li Xiqing took it and flipped through it. It was the same as what he had seen in the afternoon. Curling his lips, Li Xiqing's eyes seemed to be filled with frost. What's with this result? Tang Minjing's heart was pounding. She forced herself to say, What do you mean? The evidence is right in front of you and you still want to deny it? Then what about this one? Chapter 304. Tang Minjing acted as if she had caught a hot potato. She immediately threw the results out and shouted, "Li Xiqing, what do you mean?" Her voice was so loud that it was deafening. Li Xiao and Li Beixing did not expect Tang Menjing to be so agitated. Tang Menjing gasped and said, "You can leave me, but why do you have to doubt me like this? Am I that kind of person in your eyes?" Li Xiqing stared at her coldly. Qingyu stood behind Li Xiqing and pouted disdainfully. Of course she was. Qingyu had already seen what kind of person Tang Menjing was when they were in Australia. If people wanted to belittle themselves, nothing could stop them. Whether it's true or not, we'll know after another test. Li Zhao's voice was full of authority. He looked at her and said, "Both have my name on them, but the two sets of data are not the same at all. Miss Tang, can you explain which set is mine?" Tang Menjing's face turned pale. For a moment she did not know how to explain. At this time a nurse came out. Seeing so many people, she suddenly became nervous and said weakly, "Miss Qing?" Qingyu heard the call and turned her head. The nurse looked nervous and said, "The amniotic fluid sample taken from Miss Tang yesterday seems to be missing. I have been looking for it for a long time, but I can't find it." And Mr. Li, hearing this, everyone's face changed. Only Tang Menjing looked indescribably relaxed. Li Xiqing turned his head and stared at Tang Menjing with a pair of sharp and cold eyes, as if he wanted to freeze her alive. Tang Menjing shivered and subconsciously took a step back. At the same time, a doctor in a white coat passed by. Wearing a big black-rimmed glasses, he glanced at Tang Menjing and walked past her without a moment's pause. "Then I'll take it again." Li Xiqing's cold voice came out without any warmth. The doctor in the white coat looked back and glanced at Li Xiqing coldly. Li Xiqing noticed his gaze and also looked over. However, before he could even see Li Xiqing's face, the doctor disappeared at the end of the corridor. Hearing that, Tang Menjing turned pale and yelled, "No! You don't dare?" Qingyu provoked. No. Tang Menjing cried hysterically. "You can't do it. If they did it at this time, it would be no different from slapping their faces." She wanted face, and so did the Tang family. The news of her pregnancy had spread all over Kingstown. If it was not Li Xiqing's child, then absolutely not. The nurse also quickly came over and said, "The fetus is less than 4 months old. It's already very risky to do an amniocentesis. If you do it again, you will definitely miscarry." Hearing that, Tang Menjing was relieved. At the same time, she felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. Holding her belly, she bent over and turned pale. The nurse was shocked and quickly came over to support her. "Oh my God, hurry up and push the bed over." No one saw that at the end of the corridor, the doctor who had just walked past leaned against the wall with a cold and expressionless face. Chapter 305. Tang Menjing's pregnancy had been affected. It was hard for her to calm down after their ups and downs. "You will never be able to pay me back." When she was standing at the door of the genetics department, she could still hear the voice behind her. Tang Menjing could not help but break out in a cold sweat. That guy was too bold. The door of the ward was suddenly opened, which startled Tang Menjing. Jolted, Zhang Xian abruptly raised his head. A man in a white coat came in. He was not very tall, about 178 centimeters, wearing a big black-rimmed glasses. He looked serious. Tang Menjing was shocked to see him and exclaimed, "Why are you here?" The young man walked in, took off his glasses and looked at her face with pity. "That woman is so cruel. She is so hateful." Tang Menjing pushed him away in shock and said, "Why are you here?" Li Xiqing admitted that he knows you. "If he recognizes you, neither of us will have a good ending." "What are you afraid of? I have hacked all the surveillance cameras. Even if Li Xiqing has 3 heads and 6 arms, what can he do to me? But then again, if it were not for me, you would have been caught by Li Xiqing for another paternity test. At that time you will not be the only one ruined." Tang Menjing of course knew this and said, "Didn't you say you went home? Why are you still here? When did you come?" "Well, I sneaked out." Rong Rui pulled a stool and sat down. "Li Xiqing has his eyes on my uncle. My uncle just called me and told me to go home. I'm not afraid." He was not afraid, but Tang Menjing was very worried. She said, "Do you think you are so powerful? If it were not for you secretly plotting against Li Xiqing, he would not even know who you are. Otherwise, do you think you can get away with it? At this time you'd better listen to your uncle and go home. If Li Xiqing catches you." "So what if he catches me? What can he do?" Rong Rui looked disdainful. "There is a Li Xiao above Li Xiqing. Li Xiao's rank is the same as my uncle's. His grandfather is a general and so is my grandfather. I might not lose to him. Menjing, I really don't understand. What's so good about him? To think that you can't forget him and are even willing to give birth to his child. Although the child in her belly was not Li Xiqing's, it was enough to make Rong Rui jealous. What are you going to do now? We can't keep it forever, right? Rong Rui glanced at her abdomen meaningfully. If word gets out that this child is not Li Xiqing's, it will not only ruin you, but also your father and your entire family. Gritting her teeth, Tang Menjing looked at him and whispered, "Of course not. I will use Su Qianxi to get rid of it. Then I can put the blame on Su Qianxi and clear my name. Su Qianxi will definitely suffer." It's good that you know. Public opinion was the most terrifying thing. Gossip is a fearful thing. Got it? Go away and don't come back again. Tang Menjing urged, full of fear. Rong Rui felt a little bored. He pouted, put his glasses back on, stood up and walked toward the door. However, as soon as he opened the door, he saw 2 rows of tall men. Chapter 306. Song Yifan did not live in the center of Kingstown. Instead, he lived in a mid-range neighborhood near the center. It was quiet and peaceful, and the neighborhood was very clean. On the 16th floor, after Su Qianxi entered the door, Song Yifan quickly cleaned up a room for her. It was a simple 2-bedroom apartment with a modern style, very Song Yifan style. While Song Yifan was cleaning up the room, Su Qianxi went into the kitchen and rummaged around. She found nothing. The fridge was empty and many appliances had been powered off. Thinking of the suitcase Song Yifan was carrying, Su Qianxi suddenly realized that, was he going on a long trip? In the end he was called back by her, and as soon as he came back he helped her a lot. Su Qianxi felt touched and guilty. When she closed the fridge door, Song Yifan happened to come out. "It's done. I'll help you move it in." Su Qianxi looked at him, nodded and followed him into the house. The room was not big, less than 1/3 of the size of the house. However, it was clean and cozy, and there was the smell of air freshener in the air. Song Yifan felt a bit embarrassed and said, "It's a bit small. You can stay here for now. I'll get you a bigger house later." Su Qianxi smiled and whispered, "Dad, why are you so nice to me?" She was clearly not his biological daughter. Clearly he could have completely ignored her. However, Song Yifan really treated her like a daughter, so considerate and warm. She just glanced at his suitcase, which had just passed the security check, and the date was today. He came back from the airport. Song Yifan's eyes became gentle again. He smiled and said, "Silly girl, you are my daughter." Su Qianxi's heart suddenly felt like there was an extra stove, so warm that her eyes couldn't help turning red. "Don't cry. You don't look good anymore." Song Yifan felt sorry for her. "You must be hungry. I'll take you to dinner. What do you want to eat?" Su Qianxi shook her head. "I have no appetite. I don't want to eat." "No matter how unhappy you are, you can't torture yourself. Let's go. I'll take you to eat my favorite food." Song Yifan took her downstairs. After walking for about 3 minutes, they saw a noodle house. The noodle house was very simple and the decorations were a little old, but the hygiene was very clean. An old man was sitting at the front desk. The old man was watching TV with a big snow-white cat in his arms. Seeing them come in, a pair of blue eyes looked at them and meowed, "Meow." The old man raised his head and chuckled. "Xiaosong, you're here. Didn't you say you were going to London today? You didn't go?" "Something came up, so I came back." Song Yifan was obviously very familiar with the old man. "Let me introduce you. This is my daughter." The old man looked surprised. "Well, you have a daughter? Aren't you single?" "Goddaughter." "Hey, she looks a little familiar. Is she Li's granddaughter-in-law? What's his name again?" "That old guy is already so old, but he still runs around." "Li Sun," she said. Yes, that old fellow." "Are you that Su?" "Yes." She was a bit embarrassed. She seemed to have a tag that she couldn't get rid of. Chapter 307. The old man's face showed that he had expected it. He clapped his hands and said, "Oh, that old man is so lucky. His grandchildren are so capable, and he can marry such a beautiful granddaughter-in-law. Are you the wife of the second son?" "Yes. Of those kids, the one I admire the most is the second son. His whole family is in the military. He went into business despite everyone's opposition and did a good job. You are so lucky to marry a man like that. Not a bad guy." Su Qianxi smiled reluctantly. Song Yifan gently pushed her inside and said to the old man, "Same old rule, give me 2 servings. "Okay." The old man immediately turned his attention and shouted, 2 servings of Song's rule." Su Qianxi heard that and immediately choked. What the hell was Song's rule? Seeing her smile, Song Yifan knew that he did not bring her here for nothing. He explained, I come here often and they all know me. That's why they named my favorite food. Because he often came here, the shop's business was booming. After all, Song Yifan's name was very useful. Soon the dish was served. It was a bowl of fried paste noodles. The sauce was very fragrant. Su Qianxi broke a pair of chopsticks and slowly ate it. Song Yifan also looked hungry and ate quickly, but Su Qianxi took small bites and did not have much of an appetite. It was already past 8 o'clock in the evening. Su Qianxi's phone rang and kept vibrating on the table. There was only one word, honey. Su Qianxi turned off the sound and let it ring. After the first call, Su Qianxi turned off the phone and put it aside. Song Yifan saw it clearly. He seemed to be eating the noodles and asked, Did you have a fight? Su Qianxi did not speak and took a bite of the noodles. Li Xiqing was going crazy. When he got home, he looked everywhere but did not find Su Qianxi. She did not answer his calls and eventually turned off her phone. Su Qianxi was becoming more and more introverted and timid. She did not have any friends or close classmates. Kingstown was so big. Where would she go? The first place that came to his mind was school. Leaving this matter to Qingyu, the second place that came to his mind was Luihan. Thinking that she was probably with Luihan, Li Xiqing's heart felt like it was on fire. He drove to Kingstown First Hospital, found Luihan's ward and directly broke in. Luihan was on an 4-drip with a computer in front of him. The hand that was not on the 4-drip was holding the mouse and clicking quickly. Seeing Li Xiqing coming in, Luihan was surprised and then sneered. Mr. Li, how have you been? What about her? Luihan immediately thought of Su Qianxi. Are you looking for Chanshan? Chanshan. The intimate address quickly ignited Li Xiqing's anger. Did she come to see you today? With such a husband who doesn't even give her the right to make friends, how dare she come to me? Luihan's hand stopped moving. She's gone? Li Xiqing pursed his lips and clenched his fists. Although she didn't want to admit it, she might have run away from home. He didn't give anyone an explanation. Chapter 308. Picking up the phone, she called Song Yifan. Song Yifan did not answer the phone on the way downstairs and into the car. On the 4th call he finally answered. Song Yifan sounded the same as usual. Hello. Father-in-law Song. Song Yifan immediately became alert. Looking at Su Qianxi who was pushing the shopping cart, he stopped. Is my wife with you? Su Qianxi turned around and saw Song Yifan holding the phone, looking embarrassed. She knew it was him. Shaking her head at Song Yifan, Su Qianxi pursed her lips and looked like she was about to cry. Song Yifan was scared and quickly said, No, why is Su Qianxi with me? Is she not at home? Well, Li Xiqing suddenly felt powerless. They had been married for half a year, but he found that he did not know her at all. She did not go to Luihan or Song Yifan. She was not at school or at home. At this critical moment she could not be at the old house. So where would she go? What's wrong? Did you two have a fight? Song Yifan asked with concern. It's okay. If you have any news about her, remember to tell me. I'm looking for her. I have something very important to tell her. Okay, if I see her, I will tell her that you are going crazy looking for her. Thank you. Song Yifan hung up the phone. Seeing Su Qianxi's complicated expression, he sighed and said, He is looking for you. Okay. Su Qianxi did not react much. She turned around and took a vegetable from the shopping cart. Buy some food at home. I will cook for you in the next few days. A few days? That was great. He had never tried living with his daughter before. However, at the same time, Song Yifan felt some sympathy for Li Xiqing. Silently mourning for him for 3 seconds, he followed Li Xiqing. Seeing Li Xiqing walk out, Luihan also picked up the phone to call Su Qianxi. However, her phone was turned off. That was what he had expected. Moving the mouse, he opened the chat window with her and quickly typed, Call me back. But after thinking about it, he still made a call to Yu Lily. Su Qianxi did not have many friends, but Yu Lily was one of them. Would she go to Yu Lily? Ah. Yu Lily's whole body trembled and she screamed under the man's push. Oming loved her lascivious look. He held her waist, turned around and continued to fight. The phone on the bedside table rang. Yu Lily looked sideways and saw a string of numbers. There was no name, but when she saw the number, Yu Lily was so excited that her heart clenched. Oming let out a low sigh, bent over and scolded, Bad guy, what do you want? Half an hour later, the flames of war finally subsided. After Oming entered the bathroom, Yu Lily got up and called Luihan back. Hello. Yu Lily's voice was very low, but she was secretly delighted. Why are you looking for me? Louis Han looked at the time and said grumpily, what took you so long? What are you doing? It's none of your business. What? Hurry up and fart. Qian is missing. Li Xiqing is looking for her. Did she go to you? Yu Lily felt a dull pain in her heart. I knew it. I knew it. Chapter 309. With a snort, Yu Lily resisted the urge to throw the phone away and said, it's none of my business that she disappeared. She doesn't have many friends. She only has a good relationship with me and you in Kingstown. If she didn't come to me, she might have gone to you. No, she didn't come to me. Yu Lily was a little annoyed. Is there anything else? If not, I'll hang up. Okay. After hanging up the phone, Yu Lily got up and turned around. Unexpectedly, she found someone standing behind her. Yu Lily was scared and almost fell. After she recovered, she shouted, Damn, Oh Ming, are you crazy? You scared me to death. Oh Ming raised his eyebrows and pursed his lips. Naked, he walked toward her and asked, who were you talking to on the phone just now? Friends? Boyfriend? Yu Lily gave him a big stare. It's none of your business. Just mind your own business. She glanced down and found that he still wanted to continue after the shower. She turned her head, rolled up the quilt and said, I'm going to take a shower. Don't rush. Do it again. No, you said it was only once. The last time. This time it's true. Oh Ming pulled her back and threw her on the bed. Yu Lily was unable to fight back, so she gave in and let him have his way again. After that, Yu Lily was so tired that her bones were soft. She didn't want to move at all. Yu Lily. Yes. Yu Lily didn't even bother to lift her eyelids. Oh Ming put his big hands around her and said seriously, let's get married. Yu Lily was scared and immediately got up from him. She looked at him incredulously. Are you crazy? Oh Ming looked at the bruises on her chest. His eyes darkened and he smiled wickedly. He touched her face with his big hands and said seriously, I'm not crazy. Marry me, and I will make you the young madam of the O family. Didn't she love money? The O family was rich. But Yu Lily looked like she had seen a ghost. She got up, got out of bed and said quickly, I'm going to take a shower. Oh Ming glanced at the water stains on his body and rolled to his feet. He followed closely behind her and walked in. Yu Lily saw him come in and said with disgust, Get out. Still want to scram? Oh Ming deliberately twisted her meaning. If you're not tired, we can do it in the bathroom. How about trying to develop a new position? Go away. Yu Lily threw the shower head at him. I was afraid that you would King come every day. Furthermore, he had taken it several times a day, yet he did not see him nourishing his kidneys. Sooner or later, he would suffer from kidney deficiency in Mediterranean Sea. Oh Ming took the shower head, stretched out his hand and pressed her against the wall. He poured the water on them and said, I'm serious. I'm serious too. Scram. I'm talking about marriage. Yu Lily was suddenly speechless. Looking at his rare seriousness, she sneered, with your identity as Master O, I don't deserve you. I don't need you to be worthy of me. It's fine as long as I like you. Yu Lily thought it was ridiculous, so she pressed closer and asked, Do you like me or my body? Oh Ming pressed his body against hers and laughed evilly. He pushed his thigh between her legs and whispered, I like everything about you. Marry me and everything I have will be yours. Yu Lily was suddenly entered and she groaned. Chapter 310. When they all finished showering, it was already more than an hour later. Yu Lily lay there motionlessly, allowing Oh Ming to help her wash and dress her. Finally, she nestled comfortably on the bed and found a comfortable position to lie down. With his upper body bare, Oh Ming lit a cigar and sat on the small armchair next to the bed, smoking leisurely. Looking at Yu Lily sleeping soundly, Oh Ming felt indescribably annoyed. What was wrong with him? Why did this woman not like him at all? Now he was offering such a big price just to keep her by his side. Was this bait not big enough? Although the O family was not famous, they were absolutely rich. Didn't this woman love money? Why was she not willing to marry him? Oh Ming could not figure it out. The thick smoke blinded his eyes. After a long puff, he put out the cigar. The phone on the bed rang. Yu Lily impatiently pulled the quilt over her head. It was Li Xiqing. Looking at the time, it was past 11 p.m. Why was he calling at this time? Oh Ming picked up the phone and sat on the sofa with his legs crossed. Hello, Mr. Li, what can I do for you? Are you with your woman? Why are you thinking about my woman in the middle of the night? My wife is missing. It is very likely that she went to see your woman. After all, Kingstown was so big. It was impossible for her to disappear into thin air. He had searched all the hotels, checked all the records of the stations, and even went to the Sioux family's house, but did not find her. Unfortunately, my woman has been with me the entire day. She hasn't been separated at all. Okay, I see. Ming heard the disappointment in Li Xiqing's voice and whistled teasingly. Did your wife run away from home because she couldn't stand you? Li Xiqing's face became gloomier. He did not answer and directly hung up. Less than a second after the phone was hung up, a call came in. Was Qingyu. Boss, according to your order, we have got the traffic surveillance. Mrs. seems to have left with Mr. Song. Song Yifan? Yes. Li Xiqing suddenly felt like a fool being fooled by Su Qianxi. He thought that Song Yifan would not lie to him about this. He thought that Song Yifan would at least have some sense as an elder. But it was Li Xiqing's voice. Hearing this, Qingyu was stunned. This was the first time she heard Big Boss swear. Although it was rude, but what was with that masculine smell? Ugh, so violent, so sexy. You go back first. I'll call you if there's anything. All right. She had cried all day and was exhausted. She thought that she would fall asleep soon after lying in bed, but there were things in her mind that kept her from falling asleep. The more he lay down, the more awake he became. He got up, opened the door and walked out. Song Yifan was on the phone and was surprised to see her. She waved her hand to let him continue and walked barefoot to the sofa in the living room. However, before he sat down, the doorbell rang. When her snow-white feet touched the cold ground, she couldn't help but curl up. She walked to the door and tiptoed to look through the peephole. There was no one there. Chapter 311. Seeing him, Su Qianxi's first reaction was to pull her hand back and close the door. Li Xiqing reacted faster and grabbed the door to prevent her from closing it. Su Qianxi pushed the door twice, but it did not budge. Annoyed, she yelled, "Dad, there's a hooligan." Startled, Song Yifan turned around and was surprised to see it was Li Xiqing. However, he did not care and continued to speak fluent English. It seemed that they were talking about something important. Put on your shoes. Li Xiqing said coldly with displeasure, looking at Su Qianxi's feet that were curled up because of the cold floor. Ignoring him, Su Qianxi reached out to push him, but her hand was firmly held by him. Holding her hand, Li Xiqing tried to force his way in. Su Qianxi panicked and yelled, "Dad, help me." Song Yifan was shocked. He quickly said goodbye to his friend on the phone and hung up. Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi were still in a stalemate. Exasperated, Su Qianxi saw Song Yifan and said, "Don't let him in." However, Li Xiqing reacted faster and directly grabbed her waist. As Su Qianxi yelped, he picked her up and closed the door. They successfully broke in. Su Qianxi could not fight back at all. Feeling a bit amused, Song Yifan smiled helplessly. Being picked up, Su Qianxi blushed at her uselessness. Seeing that Song Yifan was smiling, she became angry. "You did nothing to save me." Li Xiqing threw her on the sofa, picked up her feet and put them in his palm. Looking at Song Yifan, he said, "Father-in-law Song, I'm here to take my wife home." Su Qianxi wanted to take her feet back, but he held them firmly. "Let me go," she said angrily. "Don't move," he said firmly. Li Xiqing's palm was very warm, and the coldness on her feet quickly faded. Su Qianxi looked away from him and yelled at Song Yifan, "You betrayed me." Song Yifan sat down on the sofa not far from them and said innocently, "It's not me. I didn't say anything." Li Xiqing pursed his lips and rubbed her feet with his big hand. He said casually, "I found it myself. Let's go home." Su Qianxi pulled her foot back, stood up from the sofa and went to her room. Li Xiqing wanted to follow them, but Song Yifan stopped him. "Kid, let's talk." Su Qianxi slammed the door and locked it. She got under the covers and listened to what was going on outside. However, the door was so soundproof that she could not hear anything at all. Stealthily, he put on his shoes and opened a corner of the door. Only then did he hear some movements. "I will take care of it." The voice was intermittent and Su Qianxi could not hear it clearly. Stretching out her head to hear more, she heard footsteps. He quickly retracted his head, closed and locked the door and crawled into bed. Knock knock. Someone knocked on the door. Su Qianxi covered her head with the quilt and pretended to be dead. "Su Qianxi," he left. It was Song Yifan's voice. Su Qianxi paused and took off the quilt, feeling a bit sad. She felt wronged and unwilling. What the hell? Wasn't he here to take her home? Was he leaving? Su Chinsi felt so sad that she wanted to cry. He really did not care about her at all. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.